You know this feeling, don't you? It is the heavy silence of an empty room, a quiet that doesn't bring peace, but only seems to amplify the space around you. Or perhaps you feel it most acutely in a crowd, at a lively party or on a busy street, where the sound of laughter and conversation makes you feel utterly invisible. Like a ghost drifting through a world of the living, it is a strange, hollow ache in the center of your chest, a void that no amount of success, no relationship, no entertainment seems to truly fill. You try to reach out, to connect, but you touch only an invisible wall, separating you from the world, and sometimes separating you from your own self. We are living in a great paradox. We are more connected than ever through our glowing screens, with endless lists of friends and followers, and yet we are suffering from a quiet pandemic of loneliness. The pressure to always be happy, to be successful, to be productive, to be constantly present and performing for the world, has left us exhausted and disconnected from our own souls. We work so hard to maintain an image, and then, when the night comes and we are finally alone with ourselves, we are met with that same familiar emptiness, that same feeling of being adrift. Please know this. This feeling is not your personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken or weak. It is a shared wound of our time, a symptom of a world that is spinning so fast it has begun to lose its way. But what if we were to look at this feeling in a different way? What if this loneliness, this emptiness, is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a quiet messenger carrying an urgent dispatch from the deepest part of you? More than 2.5 millennia ago, a prince named Siddhartha, who would later become known as the Buddha, looked deeply into these very same feelings. He saw that the path to true peace was not found by running away or trying to fill the void from the outside, but by courageously turning inward to observe and to understand. The Dharma, his teaching, is not a distant system of belief, but a practical science of the mind, a detailed map for navigating the complex landscapes of our own inner world. It offers the tools, not to build higher walls, but to gently dismantle them, starting with the very feeling of loneliness you are experiencing right now, and transforming it into the path toward authentic wisdom and unshakable peace. And so, let us begin not by searching for an answer, but by doing something far more courageous. Let us simply stop, just for a few moments. Let go of the constant effort to fill the void, to distract the mind, to find the next thing that might bring relief. Instead, I invite you to gently turn your attention inward, to the quiet and sometimes turbulent landscape of your own heart. We are not going to fight what we find there. We are not going to run from it. We are simply going to stay and listen to the echo in the void, to finally, and perhaps for the first time, truly identify the pain of loneliness. Loneliness wears many different masks, and it speaks in many different voices. Sometimes it is a low, persistent hum, like a grey fog that settles over your world, muting the colors and muffling the sounds of joy. It isn't a sharp pain, but a dull, chronic ache of disconnection, a feeling of being slightly out of sync with everything and everyone around you. You can be in a room full of people you love, laughing at a joke, and still feel that subtle film of separation, as if you are watching your own life from behind a pane of glass. This is the loneliness that drains your energy, the one that makes getting out of bed feel like a monumental task. Then there is the other kind of loneliness, the one that is not a fog, but a sudden, sharp sting. It is the loneliness that ambushes you when you are scrolling through your phone and you see a picture of friends gathered together, their smiles radiating a warmth that feels a million miles away. It is the pang you feel in a coffee shop when you see a couple holding hands, lost in their own world. In that moment, the world shrinks, and all you can feel is your own solitude, your own separateness. This loneliness often brings with it its cruel companions. The first is self-pity, a sorrow for yourself that whispers insidious lies into your ear. Maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I am not interesting enough, not worthy enough of that kind of connection. And right behind self-pity, envy often follows. Not a malicious envy, but a deeply painful longing, a desperate wish to have what they have, to feel that ease, that sense of belonging. In these moments, you feel like a song that has no one to hear it, a letter written with no one to send it to. This pain is real, it is valid, and it deserves to be acknowledged with tenderness. It is here that we must make a vital distinction, one that our modern world often blurs. We must understand the profound difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a state of suffering. It is an involuntary feeling of lack, defined by what is absent. It is the cold, empty room where the wind whistles through the cracks in the walls. A feeling of abandonment. When you are lonely, your mind is almost always pointing outward, searching, grasping, looking for someone or something to come and rescue you from your own discomfort. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of being, not of lacking. It is a conscious choice, a space of quiet fullness. It is not defined by the absence of others, but by the precious, uninterrupted presence of yourself. Solitude is the warm, quiet study, the peaceful garden, the sanctuary where you can finally hear your own thoughts. It is a time for restoration, for creativity, for listening to the deeper needs of your soul without the noise of the outside world. Solitude is a nutrient, a source of strength. Loneliness is a wound, and to heal that wound, we must first have the courage to look at it directly. Let me tell you the story of Kale, a merchant in a great caravan crossing an endless desert. One day, a terrifying sandstorm descended, a swirling vortex of wind and sand that blotted out the sun. When the storm finally passed, Kale found himself utterly alone. The caravan, the camels, his companions all had vanished. There was only him, and a sea of sand stretching to the horizon. In those first hours, his greatest terror was not the heat or the thirst. It was the crushing silence, the horrifying weight of his isolation. He screamed the names of his friends until his throat was raw, but only the wind answered. He was tortured by his loneliness. He chased mirages on the horizon, desperate phantoms of people and palm trees, only to collapse in the sand, weeping with despair when they dissolved into thin air. Loneliness was his enemy, an invisible monster that was stalking him under the merciless sun. Exhausted, on the verge of giving up, Kale fell to his knees. He had no more energy to scream, no more will to chase illusions. And in that forced stillness, in that moment of complete surrender, something shifted. For the first time, he stopped fighting the silence and began to listen to it. He noticed the sound of the wind was no longer a mocking laugh, but a kind of wild music, the sound of the desert breathing. That night, he looked up and was mesmerized by the sheer majesty of the stars, a brilliant tapestry of light he had never truly appreciated amidst the noise and bustle of the caravan. He looked down at his own feet and saw a single, tiny desert flower, fragile yet resilient, pushing its way through the cracked earth. And then he heard the steady, persistent rhythm of his own heart, a drumbeat of life that had been with him all along. His perspective began to change. Instead of asking, "Where is everybody?" he began to ask a new question: "What is here with me?" Right now, this simple shift from an external search to an internal observation brought a strange sense of calm and clarity. He stopped looking for the caravan and started looking at the desert. He noticed the direction of the wind, the subtle shapes of the dunes, the tracks of a small lizard in the sand. He was no longer a man panicking in an empty wasteland. He was a man present in a world that was vast, ancient, and alive. And it was this newfound calm, this quiet presence of mind, that allowed him to see what he had missed before a faint line of darker vegetation in the distance. He had found an oasis. The water he found there saved his physical life, but it was the wellspring of peace he had discovered inside himself that had truly saved his soul. He had learned to transform his loneliness into a profound and life-giving solitude. Kale's story is our story. We too are often lost in the deserts of modern life, screaming for connection, chasing the mirages of happiness we see on screens. But perhaps the rescue we are looking for is not out there. Perhaps we first need to fall to our knees in our own exhaustion, to stop fighting, and to simply listen. The loneliness you feel is not your fault. It is not a sign that you are a failure. It is a signal, it is a call from your soul, inviting you to come home. So, the first, most courageous step on this journey is not to find a way to stop being lonely. The first step is to give yourself permission to be lonely, to sit down in the quiet, to place a hand on your own heart, and to say to yourself, without judgment, without resistance, "This is the feeling of loneliness. I know you are here, and for this moment, it is okay that you are here. I will stay with you." When we dare to name the echo in the void, when we hold it with this kind of gentle acceptance, it begins to lose its terrifying power over us. It ceases to be a monster and becomes simply a feeling, an energy, an object of our awareness. And from this place of observation, we can now begin the real investigation. What is this feeling made of? Where does it truly come from? And this leads us directly to the next stage of our journey. As we begin to dissect the anatomy of this emptiness, to look at the first great truth, the Buddha taught about the fundamental nature of our human experience. Having had the courage to sit with our own discomfort, to name the uninvited guest of loneliness, we can now take the next step. It is the step from patient to scientist, from sufferer to gentle investigator. We are going to place this feeling of emptiness under a microscope, not with cold detachment, but with a warm and discerning curiosity, to understand its very structure, its true nature. In doing so, we arrive at the very foundation of the Buddha's teaching, the first of his Four Noble Truths. It is a truth that is not meant to discourage us, but to profoundly liberate us. It is the truth of what he called dukkha. When we hear the word dukkha, our minds often translate it as suffering, and we imagine great tragedy, illness, loss, or pain. And while those things are certainly forms of dukkha, the Buddha's meaning was far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to us all. Think of it not always as a sharp, stabbing pain, but often as a low-grade, chronic unsatisfactoriness. It is the feeling of a wheel that is just slightly out of alignment. The cart still moves forward. Your life still goes on, but the ride is never completely smooth. There is always a subtle vibration, a quiet friction, a persistent sense that things are not quite right. That subtle, ever-present vibration is dukkha. It is the faint hum of discontent that underlies even our most pleasant moments. And the feeling of emptiness, the specific loneliness we are exploring, is one of the most powerful and common manifestations of dukkha in our modern world. Emptiness is not, as it might seem, the absence of everything. On the contrary, it is a very powerful presence. It is the presence of a gap. It is the aching space between the life we have and the life we think we should have. The reality is you are sitting alone. The desire is for company. The reality is silence. The longing is for conversation. The chasm between what is and what ought to be is the fertile ground where emptiness grows. It is a nameless thirst, a quiet anxiety that we are missing some vital piece of the puzzle of a happy life. To truly understand this, let us travel back in time to the story of Lycomedes, a nobleman in an ancient coastal city. By every conceivable measure, Lycomedes had everything. The floors of his villa were cool marble. His gardens overflowed with exotic flowers and strutting peacocks. He owned the fastest sailing ships, the strongest horses, and his coffers were filled with gold and spices from faraway lands. His feasts were legendary, his company sought after by poets and philosophers. On the surface, his life was a portrait of perfect contentment. But in the deep of the night, after the last guest had departed and the fires had burned low, Lycomedes would sit alone in the cavernous main hall, and he would feel it, a cold, cavernous emptiness that seemed to mock his splendor, a persistent whisper from the depths of his being that said, "This is still not enough." At first, he believed the answer was simply more. He acquired more land, built a grander palace. He sponsored great naval expeditions, bringing back treasures of even greater rarity. He sought out more beautiful companions, more stimulating conversations. Each new acquisition, each new experience, brought a fleeting wave of satisfaction. a momentary silencing of the whisper. He would think, "This is it. This is what I was missing." But the pleasure would fade like sea foam on the sand, and the emptiness would return, each time feeling a little deeper, a little colder. It was like trying to quench a thirst by drinking salt water. Finally, Lycomedes heard tales of a legendary pearl, known as the Tear of the Moon. It was said to be the most perfect object in existence. Its soft, silver light capable of soothing any sorrow. Lycomedes became obsessed. This, he believed, was the final piece. This was the one object so perfect that its possession would permanently seal the void within him. He poured his vast fortune into the search. He sent his best ships and bravest captains to the ends of the known world. Years passed, and at last, at an astronomical cost, they brought it to him. That night, Lycomedes dismissed all his attendants. With trembling hands, he opened the silk-lined box. It was real. The Tear of the Moon was breathtaking, radiating a gentle, ethereal light, as if it held the captured essence of 1,000 full moons. Holding it in his palm, a wave of profound peace washed over him. A peace he had never known. The whisper was gone. The void felt full. Finally, he breathed. He slept that night with the pearl on his pillow, the first truly deep and dreamless sleep of his adult life. But when he awoke at dawn, the first feeling that greeted him was not bliss, but a familiar flicker of anxiety. He quickly looked at the pearl. It was still there, still exquisite, but something had changed. The magic was gone. It was no longer a mythical cure for his soul's ache. It was just a pearl, a beautiful, round, lifeless object. And then he heard it, no longer a whisper, but a clear, calm, devastating voice in his mind that asked, "So, what's next?" In that moment, Lycomedes collapsed, not in anger, but in a kind of sorrowful surrender. He finally understood the terrifying truth. The problem was never what he lacked on the outside. The problem was the nature of the search itself. The emptiness was not a hole in the world that could be filled with treasures. It was a condition of his own mind. The story of Lycomedes is our story. We may not be searching for a mythical pearl, but we are chasing its modern equivalents. If I can just get that promotion, I'll be secure and happy. If I can just find the perfect partner, I'll never be lonely again. If I can just buy that house, I'll finally feel at peace. If I can just get more likes, more followers, I will feel worthy. Our entire culture is a dukkha-generating machine. It is designed to make us feel that we are not enough, as we are. Advertising creates desires we never knew we had. Social media becomes a curated theater of other people's perfect lives, leaving us to compare our messy reality to their highlight reel. We are trapped on a treadmill of dissatisfaction, always running towards a horizon of happiness that recedes as we approach. We are trying to build a permanent shelter on shifting sands, and we are constantly surprised when the walls cave in. So, is the recognition of dukkha a pessimistic and depressing message? Absolutely not. In fact, it is the beginning of all true optimism. It is an act of immense liberation when you realize that this fundamental unsatisfactoriness is a universal human condition, a condition of the unenlightened mind. You can finally lay down a terrible burden, the burden of believing there is something uniquely wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are simply experiencing the first symptom of a universal condition. The Buddha was often called the great physician. And what is the very first step in any healing process? An accurate diagnosis. When a doctor finally tells you, you have the flu, you don't despair. You feel a sense of relief. At last, there is a name for the fever, the aches, the fatigue. You know it's a common ailment. You know there are remedies, and you know it will pass. By articulating the first noble truth of dukkha, the Buddha is not condemning us to a life of misery. He is offering us a precise and compassionate diagnosis for the ache in our soul. He is saying that feeling of emptiness, of longing, of never being quite content, I have a name for it. It is dukkha. It is real. It is universal. And most importantly, it has a cause. To acknowledge dukkha is not to resign yourself to it, but to empower yourself to overcome it. It is the end of the pointless war against reality. It is the acceptance that the wheel of life, by its very nature, is a little wobbly, and instead of trying to pave the entire world to make the ride smoother, perhaps it is time we learned how to repair the wheel. This, then, leads us to the most crucial question of all. If this dukkha, this unsatisfactoriness, is the illness, what is its cause? What is the virus that has infected our minds, creating this endless cycle of thirst and dissatisfaction? It is here that we delve deeper to the second noble truth, the origin of all our suffering. We have sat with our loneliness. We have looked deeply into its texture and recognized it as a form of dukkha, that pervasive, underlying unsatisfactoriness of life. Like a great physician, the Buddha has given us a diagnosis, and now, having identified the illness, we proceed to the most critical stage of the investigation, discovering its cause. What is the active agent, the virus, that gives rise to this constant feeling of not enoughness? Why does the wheel of our life continue to wobble? The Buddha's answer to this question is the second noble truth, and it can be captured in a single, powerful word, tanha. The ancient Pali word tanha is most often translated as craving or desire, but to truly grasp its meaning, it is more helpful to think of it as thirst. This is not the simple, healthy thirst for a glass of water when your body is dehydrated. This is a deeper, more profound thirst of the soul. It is a compulsive, restless, and often unconscious, reaching for something outside of ourselves in the belief that it will quench our inner fire, that it will finally fill the void. It is this very thirst that creates and sustains the painful gap between reality and our desires. The gap we have identified as dukkha. When we are in the grip of tanha, we are like a man lost at sea, dying of thirst, who foolishly drinks the salt water all around him. The act of drinking, which seems like a solution, only makes the thirst more intense, more agonizing, driving him to drink more and more in a desperate, self-destructive cycle. The Buddha observed that this thirst manifests in our lives in three primary ways. The first and most obvious is what he called kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for things that feel, taste, sound, smell, and look good to us. It is the urgent desire for the sweetness of chocolate on the tongue, the intoxicating scent of a lover's skin, the captivating narrative of the next episode in a series, the flood of validation from a notification on your phone. It is the constant pull towards pleasure and the belief that if we can just string enough of these pleasant moments together, we can build a life free from pain. But as we all know, sense pleasures are fleeting. The delicious meal ends. The beautiful song is over. The praise fades. And the thirst returns, often demanding a stronger, more intense pleasure the next time. The second form of thirst is more subtle and often more powerful. It is bhava tanha, the thirst for becoming, or the thirst for existence. This is not just about wanting things. It is about wanting to be someone. It is the deep-seated craving to construct and solidify a stable, permanent, and satisfying identity for ourselves. It is the thirst to become successful, to become respected, to become the person who is deeply loved, to become the one who finally has it all figured out in the context of our loneliness. This is the powerful craving to become a person who is not lonely, a person who is popular, connected, and central to a community. We endlessly curate our lives, our homes, our online profiles, in an attempt to build this ideal self, believing that once this identity is secure, our suffering will end. But this self is a fabrication, a castle made of clouds, and the constant effort to maintain it against the winds of change is a primary source of our anxiety and exhaustion. The third face of this thirst is perhaps the most deceptive. It is vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence, or the craving for annihilation. This is the thirst to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is the powerful, violent push against reality. It is the desperate thought, I just want this feeling of loneliness to go away. It is the anger at our own anxiety, the frustration with our own sadness. It is the desire to erase a painful memory, to silence a difficult person, to annihilate a part of ourselves that we find shameful or weak. We imagine that if we can just destroy or escape the things we don't like, we will find peace. But this aversion, this pushing away, is just the other side of the coin of grasping. It is still a form of thirst, a thirst for a different reality. By fighting what is, we bind ourselves even more tightly to our suffering. To truly grasp the all-consuming and ultimately futile nature of tanha, Buddhist cosmology offers a powerful and unsettling image, the realm of the hungry ghosts, or praetus. Imagine a world inhabited by beings with enormous, distended bellies, vast and empty, representing their insatiable, boundless desire. But these creatures have necks as thin as a needle's eye, and mouths no bigger than a pinhole. They are perpetually starving, eternally thirsty. They are surrounded by bountiful feasts and pristine rivers. But when they try to eat, the food bursts into flames in their hands. When they try to drink, the water turns to dust and ashes in their mouths. They can see what they crave. They can almost touch it. But they can never, ever consume enough to be satisfied. Their condition is one of tragic, perpetual torment. A life defined by the agonizing gap between their infinite desire and their infinitesimal ability to fulfill it. This image is not just an ancient, spooky fairy tale. It is a startlingly accurate, psychological portrait of the human mind in the grip of Tanha. We are living in the realm of the hungry ghost whenever we are mindlessly scrolling through an infinite feed of images, sounds, and information, a feast that never nourishes and a river that never quenches. We are a hungry ghost when we stand in front of a full refrigerator, feeling empty, looking for something that will finally hit the spot. We are a hungry ghost when we chase the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase, believing this time it will be different. This time it will finally make us whole, only to find the satisfaction evaporate, leaving the same old hunger behind. We are feeding our giant, empty bellies through a pinhole neck, and we wonder why we are still so hungry. So here we have the second step of the diagnosis. Dukkha, our deep and pervasive unsatisfactoriness, is the symptom. Tanya, this relentless, three-faced thirst, is the cause. This knowledge is not a reason for despair. It is not a final judgment on our flawed nature. It is a key. It is the beginning of hope, because once you understand the mechanism that creates your suffering, you can begin to find the lever to undo it. The teaching is not that all desire is bad. The desire for food, for shelter, for safety, for the well-being of others, these are healthy. The problem is this blind, compulsive, automatic thirst that promises satisfaction but only delivers more thirst. And this leads us to the most hopeful and life-altering question in this entire spiritual journey. If this thirst is the direct cause of our suffering, of our loneliness, of our emptiness, then is it possible to be free from this thirst? Is there a state of being where the hungry ghost is finally fed? Where the salt water is no longer our only option? Where the wobbly wheel can finally be fixed? The answer the Buddha gives is a resounding, unequivocal yes. And that answer is contained within the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, the promise of an end to our suffering. We have now traveled through the first two great truths on the Buddha's map of the human mind. We have diagnosed our condition as dukkha, a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, and we have identified its cause as tanha, a relentless, insatiable thirst, a very logical, almost clinical process. But now, the great physician invites us to ask a question that is at once profoundly simple and dizzyingly deep. A question that cuts to the very heart of our suffering. The question is this: who, exactly, is it that is feeling lonely? Who is this I that is suffering from dukkha? Who is this me that is consumed by tanha? We are about to embark on an investigation, not into the world outside, but into the very nature of the investigator. This is the wisdom of anatta, or not self. Of all the Buddha's teachings, this is perhaps the most challenging to our conventional way of thinking, and yet, it holds the key to the most radical form of freedom. Our entire lives are built upon the unspoken, unexamined assumption that deep inside each of us, there is a core, a central command center, a permanent and unchanging me. We believe this I is the one who was born, who went to school, who fell in love, who got a job, and who is now, in this moment, feeling lonely. It feels like a solid, continuous entity, the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings. But the Buddha asks us to do something extraordinary to actually go looking for it. When we do, he suggests we will not find a solid thing, but rather a dynamic process, a flowing stream of interconnected events. He deconstructed our experience of self into 5 distinct categories, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. Let us look at them, one by one, in our search for this lonely I. First, there is form rupa. This is your physical body, your bones, your skin, your organs. Your hair is your body, the you that is feeling lonely. Take a moment. Look at your hand. Is that hand you? Most of us would say no. It is my hand. The body is something we have, not something we are. Furthermore, it is constantly changing. The cells that make up your body today are not the same cells that were there 7 years ago. It is a river of physical matter, constantly in flux. It gets sick. It gets old. It feels pleasure and pain. But we cannot locate a permanent me within this collection of flesh and bone. So, the lonely self is not the body. Second, there is feeling Vedana. This refers to the raw, primal sensations that arise whenever we come into contact with the world. Every experience is tagged as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The sting of criticism is an unpleasant feeling. The warmth of a hug is a pleasant feeling. The sensation of your clothes on your skin right now might be neutral. The ache of loneliness is a powerful, unpleasant feeling. But are you this feeling? Think about it. Feelings are like the weather, they arise. They stay for a while, and then they pass. A moment ago you might have felt curiosity. Now you might feel understanding. Later you might feel boredom. If you were your feelings, you would cease to exist every time a feeling changed. So, we are not our feelings. The unpleasant feeling of loneliness arises, but it is not the essential me. Third, we have perception sana. This is the mental faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. When light hits your eye, that's form. The raw data is feeling. When your mind says, that is a tree, that is perception. When you feel that ache in your chest and your mind labels it, this is loneliness. That is perception at work. But are you this label? Is the thought I am lonely the actual solid you, like feelings? Perceptions are fleeting and often unreliable. Two people can look at the same event and have wildly different perceptions. The label is not the thing itself, so we are not our perceptions. Fourth is mental formation sankhara. This is a broad and crucial category that includes all our thoughts, opinions, biases, habits, memories, dreams, and intentions. It is the chattering storyteller in our head, the one who takes the raw data of feeling and perception and weaves it into a narrative. This is the aggregate that says, I am lonely because no one called me. This always happens to me. I must be unlovable. This is where most of us locate our sense of self. In this stream of thoughts, in this personal story. But are you your thoughts? If you sit quietly for even a minute, you can watch your thoughts arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. They are impersonal, conditioned phenomena. You are not your thoughts, any more than you are the clouds. Finally, there is consciousness vijnana. This is the fundamental capacity of awareness itself, the light of knowing that illuminates all the other aggregates. It is the consciousness that is aware of the body, aware of feelings, aware of perceptions, and aware of thoughts. Aha, we might think, this must be me, the silent watcher. But the Buddha points out that consciousness, too, is not a standalone thing. It is dependent. Eye consciousness arises dependent on the eye and a visible object. Ear consciousness arises dependent on the ear and a sound. Mind consciousness arises dependent on the mind and a thought. It cannot exist on its own. It is not a permanent, independent soul, but a flickering awareness that arises in conjunction with the other aggregates. So, if we are not our body, not our feelings, not our perceptions, not our thoughts, and not our awareness, then where is this solid I that is feeling so terribly lonely? The profound and liberating answer is that it is nowhere to be found. What we call a self is not an entity, but an event. It is the dynamic, interdependent process of these 5 aggregates flowing together, creating the illusion of a solid, separate self. To illustrate this, there is a famous story in the Buddhist texts about a monk named Nagasena and a king named Milinda. The king, a sharp-witted Greek ruler, wanted to test the monk's wisdom. He arrived at the monastery and asked, "What is your name?" "Venerable sir," the monk replied, "I am known as Nagasena." "Your Majesty." "But this is just a designation, a convenient name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was delighted, thinking he had caught the monk in a philosophical trap. No person. Then who is it that wears these robes, who eats and sleeps and studies? If there is no Nagasena, there can be no merit in giving you offerings and no crime in murdering you. He then pointed to the magnificent chariot that had brought him. "Venerable sir, did you walk here, or did you arrive in a chariot?" "I came in a chariot." Nagasena replied calmly. "Excellent," said the king. "Then please, explain to me what a chariot is. Is the pole the chariot?" "No." "Your Majesty." "Are the wheels the chariot?" "No." "Your Majesty." "Is the axle, the ropes, the yoke, the canopy, are any of these individual parts?" "The chariot?" "No." "Your Majesty." Nagasena replied to each question. Then the king declared triumphantly, "Is the chariot something else, separate from all of its parts?" "No." "Your Majesty." Then, "Monk," the king laughed, "you have told a lie. there is no chariot. At this, the wise monk Nagasena smiled gently. Your Majesty, you are a great king, raised in luxury. How did you arrive here today? In the chariot you see before you. You say you arrived in a chariot. Nagasena said, but when we investigate, we find there is no chariot. Chariot is simply a convenient name, a label we give to the collection of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the yoke. When they are assembled and function together, there is no independent, essential chariot existing apart from its components. He then turned the analogy back on the king. It is the same with Nagasena. It is a name given to the collection of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. When these five are present and working together, we use the convenient term person. But when we look for a permanent, unchanging self that owns them, it cannot be found. This insight is the antidote to the deepest sting of loneliness. The suffering of loneliness feels intensely personal. It is I who am isolated, I who am unloved, I who am left out. The I feels heavy, solid, and tragically real. But when we look for this I, it dissolves like a mirage. There is a body, there is a feeling of sadness, there is a perception of being alone, there are thoughts telling a story of rejection, but there is no solid, singular entity at the center of it all being victimized. When loneliness arises, instead of thinking, I am lonely, we can learn to observe, there is a feeling of loneliness present in the body-mind system right now. The first statement creates a solid, suffering identity. The second recognizes a temporary, impersonal process. It is the difference between believing I am the storm and knowing I am the sky in which the storm is passing. The sky is not damaged by the storm. If the self is not a solid thing, but a fluid process, then the experiences attached to it are also not solid. They are not a permanent stain on our being. This realization naturally leads us to our next investigation. If there is no permanent self, what about the world it experiences? What about the feeling of loneliness itself? Is that permanent? This brings us to the great law that governs all conditioned existence, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. We have just undertaken a profound investigation, searching for the solid, separate I that feels so lonely, and we have found that it dissolves under examination. We are not a static entity, but a dynamic, flowing process of mind and body. This discovery is liberating, but it naturally leads to the next question. If the self is a process, what is the nature of that process? What about the experiences themselves, the thoughts, the sensations, the powerful emotions like loneliness? Are they solid? Are they permanent? To answer this, we now turn to one of the most fundamental and observable laws of the universe, a truth the Buddha called anicca, or impermanence. At first, the idea of impermanence can sound unsettling, even melancholic. It speaks to the undeniable fact that everything changes, everything ends. The mighty mountains are slowly worn down by wind and rain. Stars are born, burn brightly for eons, and eventually die. The civilizations we build will one day turn to dust. On a more personal level, our own bodies are in a constant state of flux. They grow, they age, they heal, and they decay. Our relationships shift. Our opinions change. Our life circumstances are never truly static. Nothing is exempt from this universal law. But the Buddha did not teach this truth to cause us despair. He taught it because seeing it clearly is the key to ending our struggle. It is not a grim philosophy. It is a simple, observable fact, as neutral and as fundamental as the law of gravity. Our suffering arises not from the fact that things change, but from our desperate attempts to resist this change. We try to grasp and hold onto pleasant experiences, building dams of attachment to stop the river of life from flowing, and we try to push away and block unpleasant experiences, building walls of aversion to protect ourselves from the inevitable storms of existence. We want the feeling of love and connection to last forever, and we want the feeling of loneliness and sadness to end immediately. This constant grasping and pushing, this war against the very nature of reality, is what creates our tension, our anxiety, and our suffering. We are trying to build a permanent home on the deck of a ship that is sailing across the ocean. To illuminate this wisdom in a way that could be grasped by anyone, from a peasant to a king. A timeless story is often told. There was once a great and powerful monarch who ruled a vast kingdom. He was a man of intense passions, and his moods swung like a pendulum. In times of victory and celebration, he would be overcome with ecstatic pride and joy. In times of defeat or difficulty, he would sink into the depths of a dark and inconsolable despair. Weary of this emotional roller coaster, he summoned the wisest advisor in his court. "I want you to create for me an object," the king commanded, "something I can carry with me always. It must have a magic quality when I am despondent. It must give me hope, and when I am euphoric, it must bring me back to earth and teach me humility." The wise advisor bowed and left. "Vexlater." He returned not with some elaborate magical device, but with a simple, elegant ring. The king was unimpressed. "This is it. A simple ring," the advisor simply said. "Look closely at the inscription. Your Majesty." The king brought the ring closer to his eyes and saw 4 small words etched into the metal. "This, too, shall pass." A few months later, the king's army won a monumental battle, securing his empire for a generation. The city erupted in a week-long festival. At the height of the celebration, as he stood on his balcony receiving the adulation of the crowd, he felt his heart swell with unbearable pride. He felt invincible, like a god among men. In that moment, he happened to glance down at the ring. "This, too, shall pass." A wave of sobriety washed over him. He realized this moment of glory was just that, a moment. It was fleeting, and this understanding allowed him to enjoy it more fully, without the arrogant clinging that had so often been his downfall. A year later, tragedy struck. A plague swept through the capital, and his beloved wife fell gravely ill and died. The king was shattered. His world turned to grey ash. He locked himself in his chambers for days. refusing to eat or speak, consumed by a grief so profound he thought it would surely kill him. As he sat there, twisting his hands in anguish, his fingers brushed against the ring, he forced his tear-filled eyes to focus on the inscription. This, too, shall pass. In the depths of his despair, those words were not a cruel dismissal of his pain, but a lifeline. They were a gentle promise that even this monumental grief, this all-consuming emptiness, was not a permanent state. It was a storm, a terrible storm, but it was a storm that was moving through him, not a final destination. This understanding did not erase his pain, but it made it bearable. It gave him the strength to open the door and step back into the world. This simple inscription is the essence of Anicca, and it is our most powerful tool when confronting the seemingly solid and overwhelming feeling of loneliness. When that familiar ache arises in your chest, when your mind begins to spin its story of isolation, you can meet it with this wisdom. The feeling of loneliness is a cloud passing through the vast sky of your awareness. It is not the sky itself. No matter how dark the cloud, how loud the thunder, the sky remains unstained, untouched. Your awareness is that sky. The loneliness is a temporary weather pattern. Our mistake is that we treat the cloud as if it is the sky. We believe the feeling is a permanent feature of who we are. We think, I am a lonely person. This creates a solid, heavy identity, and then we fight it. We try to distract ourselves, to numb ourselves, to argue with the feeling, to force it to go away. But this is like standing outside and yelling at a rain cloud to stop raining. It is a futile and exhausting struggle. The practice of mindfulness offers a different way. Instead of fighting the weather, we can become a curious weather watcher of our own inner world. When the feeling of loneliness arises, the practice is to first acknowledge it gently. Ah, here is loneliness. I know this feeling. Then, instead of immediately getting lost in the story about the loneliness, we can bring our attention to the raw, physical sensation of it. Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a hollowness in the chest, a tightness in the throat, a heaviness in the stomach? Just observe these sensations with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, and as you watch, you will notice something incredible. It changes. The sensation might intensify, then soften. It might move. It might transform into a different feeling altogether. You are witnessing Anicca in real time. You are seeing for yourself that this feeling is not a solid block of concrete, but a shimmering, flowing river of energy. This direct insight is profoundly liberating. It breaks the spell. It shatters the false identity of I am a lonely person. The I is not a permanent self, and loneliness is not a permanent state. Both are transient processes, arising due to causes and conditions. When you truly see this, you no longer have to carry the heavy burden of your loneliness. You can simply allow it to be there, knowing with unshakable confidence the truth of the King's ring. This, too, shall pass. This intellectual understanding, this wisdom, is the foundation. But when the storm of feeling is raging, it can be difficult to remember the wisdom. We need more than just an idea. We need a practical, immediate anchor. We need a safe harbor, we can steer our ship into until the storm carbles. What is this anchor? What is this refuge that is always available to us? No matter what weather we are experiencing inside, this brings us to the very heart of meditative practice. A tool so simple, so accessible, and yet so powerful, it can become the center of our entire journey. It is time to find refuge in the breath. We have explored the profound, liberating wisdom of impermanence. We have seen, intellectually, that the dark cloud of loneliness is just a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our awareness. This is a powerful insight, but let us be honest with ourselves. When the storm is raging, when the winds of grief are howling and the rain of sorrow is beating down, it can be almost impossible to remember the nature of the sky. An intellectual understanding is like a map of a safe harbor. It is invaluable, but it is not the harbor itself. When our ship is being tossed on violent waves, we don't just need a map, we need an anchor. We need a real, tangible refuge that we can turn to in this very moment. Something to hold us steady until the storm subsides. What if I told you that you have carried this anchor with you every single moment of your life? It is a refuge that costs nothing, requires no special equipment, and is available to you right now. Wherever you are, it is the most humble, most overlooked, and yet most profound process happening within you, the rhythm of your own breath. Before we learn how to use it, we must first appreciate why we need it. Think of your mind, especially when you are feeling lonely or distressed, as a small, excitable monkey, or perhaps a drunken monkey, as some ancient masters called it, one that has also been stung by a scorpion. This monkey is restless, agitated, and cannot stay still for a single moment. It leaps from branch to branch in the vast jungle of your consciousness. One moment, it swings to a branch in the past, replaying a painful memory of rejection, picking at the scab of an old wound. Why did they say that? What did I do wrong? The next moment, it catapults itself into the future, imagining 1,000 terrifying scenarios of a lonely old age, of being forgotten, of never finding connection. What if I'm always alone? What if no one ever truly understands me? This drunken monkey is the storyteller of our suffering. It weaves the raw data of a passing feeling into a grand, tragic epic titled My Lonely Life. And we, mistaking its frantic chatter for the truth, become utterly exhausted and lost in the jungle it creates. The practice of mindfulness of breath, known in Pali as anapanasati, is the simple, radical act of giving this monkey a place to rest. It is the practice of coming home. So, let us try it. Just for a moment. You don't need to sit in a special posture. You can be in a chair, on the floor, even lying down. Just find a position where your body can be comfortable and your back can be relatively straight without being rigid. Allow your hands to rest in a way that feels natural. And then, gently, without any force, allow your eyes to close. Your first task is simply to arrive in your own body. Feel the points of contact between your body and the surface beneath you. Feel the weight of your own presence. And now, bring your attention, as if you were shining a soft, gentle flashlight, to the sensation of your own breathing. Don't try to change it. Don't try to make it deeper or slower. Your body knows how to breathe. Your only job is to feel it. Simply feel the air entering your body and feel the air leaving your body to help anchor your attention. You might choose to rest your awareness at one particular spot. Perhaps you feel the breath most clearly as the cool air passing in and out of the nostrils. Or maybe you notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Or perhaps it's the expansion and contraction of your abdomen. There is no right or wrong place. Just choose one and let your attention rest there. Like a butterfly resting on a flower, feel one full in-breath. Feel one full out-breath. That's it. That's the entire practice. Now, within a few seconds, you will notice something. The monkey will get restless. It will start to wander. A thought will arise. A memory. A sound from outside. A plan for tomorrow. The butterfly will fly away from the flower. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. This is the most important moment in the practice. The moment you notice your mind has wandered is a moment of pure mindfulness. You have woken up, and what do you do when you wake up? You don't scold the monkey. You don't get angry or frustrated with yourself. You simply, gently, and with infinite patience, acknowledge where the mind has gone. Thinking, and then you kindly guide it back. You bring the butterfly back to the flower. You return your attention to the feeling of the next breath. There is a classic Buddhist story used to describe this process perfectly. Imagine our untamed mind is a wild, powerful ox, and our body is a farmer. To tame the ox, the farmer doesn't beat it. He simply takes a strong rope, representing mindfulness, and ties the ox to a sturdy, unshakable post. The post is the breath. At first, the ox is furious. It bellows and thrashes, pulling with all its might, trying to run back to the jungle of thoughts and distractions. The rope grows taut, but it holds. The farmer's job is not to fight the ox, but simply to make sure the rope stays tied to the post. Over and over, the ox exhausts itself, pulling and struggling, but each time, it finds it is still connected to the post. Gradually, over time, a profound realization dawns on the ox. It realizes that the post is not a prison. The post is safety. The post is rest. And eventually, the great, wild beast calms down and lies down peacefully at the foot of the post. This is what happens to our minds. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently guide it back to the breath, you are strengthening the rope of mindfulness. You are taming the wild energy of your own mind, not through force, but through persistent, gentle kindness. You are teaching your mind that the present moment, symbolized by the breath, is a safe place to be. Why is this so powerful against loneliness? Because the grand, painful story of I am a lonely person cannot survive in the pure reality of the present moment. That story is constructed from the bricks and mortar of the past, memories of rejection, and the future fears of isolation. But in the raw, simple sensation of this one in-breath, right now, is there loneliness? in the feeling of this one out breath. Is there a story? No. There is just the feeling of air in that single moment of pure awareness of the breath. You are free. You are home. Your breath is the most loyal companion you will ever have. It has been with you from the moment you were born, and it will be with you until the moment you die. It asks for nothing, and yet it gives you everything. It gives you life itself. To pay attention to your breath is to connect with the most fundamental process of being alive. It is an act of profound self-respect and self-care. It is a way of saying to yourself, I am here, I am alive, and that is enough. When you feel lost in the wilderness of your thoughts, overwhelmed by the feeling of isolation, remember the anchor, remember the post, remember your home. You can return to it at any time. In the line at the grocery store, sitting in traffic, in the middle of a difficult conversation, just take one conscious breath. Feel the air come in. Feel the air go out. In that moment, you have stepped out of the raging storm and into the quiet refuge of your own being. In that moment, you are connected to the very pulse of life. And when you are truly connected to life, you can never be truly alone. This practice of calming the mind and returning home creates a foundation of inner stability and peace. And from this stable ground, from this place of self-acceptance, we can now begin to do something even more transformative. We can begin to actively cultivate the positive states of mind that are the direct antidotes to loneliness and ill will. We can learn to plant a garden in our newly tamed field, and the first seed we will plant is the seed of boundless, unconditional friendliness, the seed of metta. Having found a quiet, stable refuge in the rhythm of the breath, we have created a space of inner calm. We have learned to sit peacefully at the foot of the post. Even while the jungle of thoughts continues its chatter in the distance, this stability is a profound achievement in itself. But it is also a foundation upon which we can now begin to build. We can do more than simply observe the weather of our mind. We can actively cultivate a beautiful garden within it. We can consciously plant and nurture the very qualities of heart that are the direct and powerful antidotes to the cold grip of loneliness. The first, most important, and most healing seed we will plant is the seed of metta. Metta is a word from the ancient Pali language that is often translated as loving kindness. But this translation can be misleading if we associate it with the conditional, sentimental, or romantic love we so often see in our culture. Metta is not about liking someone, or approving of them, or needing anything from them. It is a far more fundamental and unconditional quality. It is a benevolent, steady, and boundless wish for well-being. Think of the warmth of the sun. The sun shines on everyone and everything, equally the saint and the sinner, the flower and the weed, not because they have earned it, but because its very nature is to radiate warmth. Metta is the practice of cultivating that same unconditional, radiant warmth within our own hearts. It is the direct medicine for the poisons of resentment, anger, envy, and the cold, isolating feeling of loneliness. Loneliness closes the heart. Metta is the practice of gently, intentionally opening it again, the practice known as metta bhavana, or the cultivation of loving kindness. traditionally begins in a place that may feel, for many of us, the most challenging and unnatural place to start. It begins with ourselves, right away. Our inner critic might object, "Isn't that selfish? Am I not supposed to love others first? I haven't done anything to deserve my own kindness." Please, if you hear these voices, recognize them with gentleness, and for a moment, ask them to step aside. There is a profound wisdom in starting with the self. You cannot pour water for a thirsty traveler from a well that is dry. You cannot offer warmth to another from a heart that is frozen with self-criticism. To genuinely wish for the well-being of others, we must first recognize that our own well-being matters, that we too are worthy of this fundamental kindness. So, let us begin the practice. Find a comfortable posture, just as you did with the breath meditation. You may find it helpful to place a hand gently over the center of your chest, a simple gesture of warmth and self-acceptance. And then, we begin to silently, internally, offer ourselves a few simple phrases, like a heartfelt blessing. The words themselves are not magic, but the sincere intention behind them is what matters. The traditional phrases are a good place to start. Breathing in, breathing out. You gently wish for yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Repeat these phrases slowly, softly, like a lullaby for your own heart. Don't worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of self-love. That is not the point. The point is the gentle, patient repetition of the intention. You are planting the seeds. You are turning the direction of your heart towards friendliness. For many of us, who have spent a lifetime directing criticism and judgment inward, this is a revolutionary act. So be patient. Just water the seeds with your steady, kind attention. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. To understand the sheer power of this quality of heart, there is a dramatic story from the life of the Buddha. His jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him. He arranged for the most ferocious war elephant in the kingdom, an animal named Nalagiri, to be fed alcohol until it was in a maddened, murderous rage. He then had the elephant unleashed onto the narrow lane where the Buddha was calmly walking. Panic erupted. People screamed and fled for their lives as the enraged elephant charged, trampling everything in its path, its eyes red with fury. The Buddha's own attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He did not run. He did not prepare to fight. He simply stood still, looked at the charging, terrifying beast, and opened his heart, radiating a powerful, unwavering field of pure metta towards Nalagiri. As the elephant entered this invisible field of loving kindness, a strange thing happened. Its frantic, charging run began to slow. The rage in its eyes began to soften. The deafening trumpeting ceased. The immense beast, which moments before had been an unstoppable engine of destruction, came to a halt before the Buddha. It slowly lowered its great head, and then, in an act of complete submission and peace, knelt down before him. The Buddha reached out and gently stroked its forehead. The story tells us that the elephant was so overcome with a feeling of peace that tears streamed from its eyes. This story is not just about taming a wild animal. It is a profound teaching about the nature of our own minds. We all have raging elephants within us. The elephant of our anger, the elephant of our fear, the elephant of our harsh self-judgment, and the elephant of our profound loneliness. Our usual strategy is to either run from these feelings or to try and fight them head-on, which only seems to make them stronger. The Buddha shows us another way. By meeting these powerful, destructive energies with the unwavering, unconditional warmth of metta, we can tame them. We can soothe the savage beasts within our own hearts. Once you have spent some time offering this kindness to yourself, creating a foundation of inner warmth, the practice then expands outward in ever-widening circles. First, you bring to mind a benefactor or a respected teacher, someone for whom it is very easy to feel warmth and gratitude. You hold their image in your mind and offer them the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel your heart naturally extending this warmth. Next, you bring to mind a dear friend, someone you love. Again, you bathe them in these benevolent wishes, letting your natural affection flow freely. After this, you move to what is called a neutral person. This might be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, someone you see regularly but have no strong feelings about. Either way, by extending metta to them, you begin to stretch your heart beyond its usual boundaries of likes and dislikes. You recognize their shared humanity, their own quiet wish to be happy and free from suffering. Then, only when you feel stable and ready, the practice moves to a difficult person. This is someone with whom you have conflict or resentment. This is an advanced and delicate practice. The aim is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself to like them. The aim is to recognize that their harmful actions likely stem from their own deep suffering and confusion, and to see that holding on to your own anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only harms you. With great care, you can try to extend the wish. May you, too, be free from suffering and find peace. This is a practice for your own liberation from the prison of hatred. Finally, the circle expands to encompass all beings. Everywhere, you radiate metta in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the left, to the right, above and below, to all humans, all animals, all creatures in all realms, without any exception. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, your heart breaks free from its small, isolated chamber and merges with the vast, interconnected web of life. It is the ultimate antidote to loneliness, for in that moment of boundless goodwill, there is no other. Metta is an active, creative process. It is the conscious choice to meet the world, not with a closed fist of fear and judgment, but with an open hand of warmth and kindness. It soothes the inner critic, builds a profound sense of self-worth, and dissolves the walls that loneliness builds around the heart. Having learned to wish for happiness for ourselves and for others, We are now ready to explore its natural companion. What happens when we are confronted, not just with a neutral state, but with active, present pain? What quality of heart is needed? Then, this calls for the cultivation of metta's sister virtue, the profound quality of karuna, or compassion. We have learned to cultivate metta, the unconditional, radiant warmth of the sun, wishing for ourselves and all beings to be happy. This is a beautiful and transformative practice, but the sun does not only shine on peaceful gardens, it also shines on fields that are parched, on plants that are wilting, on the harsh realities of pain and struggle. What happens when our hearts encounter not just a neutral state, but active, undeniable suffering? A wish for happiness alone can feel incomplete in the face of raw pain. This is where we must cultivate metta's twin sister, a quality of heart that is just as vital and even more profound in its healing power. This is the quality of karuna, or compassion. Karuna is the heart's response to seeing suffering. It is often described as the trembling or quivering of the heart when it is touched by pain. It is essential to distinguish this from pity. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, you poor thing." And in doing so, it creates distance and reinforces a sense of separation between the one who pities and the one who is pitied. Karuna, on the other hand, meets suffering on the same level. It recognizes a shared vulnerability and says, "I understand this pain." It is part of our shared human experience. It is not the emotional overwhelm of empathy that leads to burnout, where we drown in another's sorrow. Rather, it is the active, courageous wish for suffering to cease, coupled with the wisdom to know that we cannot always remove the pain, but we can always meet it with love. And just as with metta, the practice of compassion must begin with the most wounded, most neglected person we know ourselves. We have spent so much of this journey observing our own loneliness. Now, instead of just observing it, we will learn to hold it. Imagine a mother with her small child who is sick with a fever. The child is crying, uncomfortable, and in pain. What does the mother do? Does she get angry at the child for crying? Does she judge the fever as a sign of weakness? Does she try to distract herself and pretend the child is not suffering? No, a loving mother does none of these things. She simply picks up her child, holds him close, and rocks him gently. She offers her warmth, her presence, her quiet strength. She doesn't need to have the cure, but her very act of holding the pain with immense tenderness begins the process of healing. We must learn to become this mother to our own pain. When the familiar ache of loneliness arises, instead of our usual reaction to fight it, to numb it, to spin stories of self-pity around it, we can try something new. We can place a hand on our heart and offer it these words of karuna. May I be free from this suffering. May I hold this pain with tenderness. May I be kind to myself in this moment of difficulty. You are not trying to fix the loneliness. You are simply changing your relationship to it. You are transforming it from an enemy to be defeated into a wounded child that deserves your gentle care. The most powerful illustration of how compassion is born from suffering is found in the ancient story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a simple life, and her entire world, Her entire source of happiness was her infant son. One day, the child fell ill and, in a matter of hours, died in her arms. Kisagutami was consumed by a grief so absolute it drove her mad. She could not accept the reality of what had happened. Clinging to the small, lifeless body, she went from house to house throughout her village, frantically begging everyone she met for medicine that could cure her son. Some people mocked her. Others turned away in pity. But everyone told her the same thing: the boy was dead. And no medicine could help, refusing to believe them. She was eventually directed to the one person they thought might have a solution. The enlightened one, the Buddha. She burst into his presence, laid the body of her son at his feet, and pleaded, "Master, can you make a medicine that will bring my son back to life?" The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with an ocean of calm, boundless compassion. He did not state the harsh truth that the boy was gone. He saw the state of her mind and knew that she could not receive that truth yet. Instead, he offered her a task. "Yes, I can make such a medicine," he said gently, "but to do so, I need one special ingredient. I need you to bring me a handful of mustard seeds." Kisagutami's heart leaped with frantic hope. "A handful of mustard seeds, I will get them at once." "Master, there is one condition," the Buddha added calmly. "The mustard seeds must come from a house where no one, not a parent, not a child, not a spouse, not a servant has ever died." Filled with a desperate energy, Kisagutami began her quest. She went to the first house. "The Buddha needs a handful of mustard seeds to make a medicine for my son. Can you spare some?" The woman of the house replied, "Of course. Take all you need." As Kisagutami was about to take them, she remembered the condition. "Where?" she asked. "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" The woman's face fell. "My dear," she said sadly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Just last year, I lost my husband." So Kisagutami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family was kind and willing to share their seeds, but every single family had been touched by death. One had lost a mother, another a brother, another a child just like hers. House after house, her desperate, frantic hope began to transform into a dawning, heartbreaking realization. As the sun began to set, she sat down by the side of the road, the body of her son still in her lap. She looked at the flickering lights of the village, appearing one by one in the dusk. "How selfish I have been in my grief," she thought to herself. "I thought that only I had suffered this loss. But this is the law for all. This is the nature of life." In that moment, her intense, personal, isolating grief, "My son is dead," dissolved into a vast, universal, and connecting compassion. She understood that her pain was not a unique curse, but a thread in the great, shared tapestry of human existence. With this profound understanding, she took the body of her son to the charnel ground for its final rites, and then returned to the Buddha, not as a desperate mother, But as a woman who had woken up, this is the power of karuna. It takes the sharp, isolating shard of our personal pain and shows us that it is a piece of the same mirror that reflects the heart of every living being. When you feel lonely, you can remember Kisa Gautami. You can realize that in this very moment, millions of other people on this planet are feeling that exact same ache. The lonely teenager in their bedroom, the elderly person in a nursing home, the successful CEO in a penthouse apartment. They are all your companions in this experience. Your loneliness ceases to be a wall that separates you. It becomes a bridge that connects you from this place of shared humanity. The circle of compassion naturally expands. You think of a loved one who is struggling, and you wish from your heart, may you be free from your suffering. You see a stranger on the street with a pained expression, and you silently wish, may you find peace. And most radically, you can bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt you. Instead of feeding your anger, you can try to see that their harmful actions are born from their own inner torment, their own ignorance and pain. You can whisper the wish, may you be free from the suffering that causes you to inflict suffering on others. This is not for them. This is for you. It is the act of freeing yourself from the poison of hatred. Compassion is the ultimate alchemy. It takes the lead of our personal sorrow and transforms it into the gold of a deep and unshakable connection with all of life. Having learned to meet our own pain and the pain of others with a tender, open heart, we can now explore another essential quality, the ability to rejoice in happiness and good fortune. A quality that is the direct antidote to the poison of envy. We are now ready to cultivate mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have journeyed inward, learning to meet our own suffering with the boundless compassion of a mother holding her child. We have learned that our personal pain, when seen with wisdom, can become a bridge connecting us to the heart of all humanity. This is a profound and necessary skill for healing. But healing is not just about learning to dress our wounds. It is also about learning to create an environment where those wounds are less likely to be inflicted in the first place. What if we could fundamentally change our relationship with the very situation that we believe causes our loneliness? What if the empty room we fear so much is not a prison cell, but a vast, open sanctuary waiting to be discovered? This is where we learn the art of redefining being alone, of transforming the bitter poison of loneliness into the sweet nectar of solitude. Throughout this journey, we have touched upon the difference between loneliness and solitude. But now we must make this distinction the very center of our practice. Loneliness, as we have experienced it, is an involuntary state of lack. It is a painful awareness of something missing: a companion, a conversation, a sense of belonging. It is a state of poverty, where the heart feels empty and yearns to be filled from the outside. The mind in a state of loneliness is agitated and restless, constantly scanning the horizon for rescue. It is a raw, vulnerable state of exile. Solitude, on the other hand, is not a lack, but a presence. It is the voluntary, conscious, and joyful state of being with oneself. It is a state of richness, a quiet abundance that comes from within. Solitude is not about being antisocial or shutting the world out. It is about gathering your own energy, listening to your own wisdom, and nourishing your own soul so that when you do engage with the world, you do so from a place of fullness, not of need. Loneliness is the barren, windswept plain. Solitude is the deep, tranquille forest, full of life and ancient wisdom. Our culture has taught us to fear the forest. We are conditioned to see any time spent alone as a sign of failure, a social deficiency. We fill every spare moment with noise, with distraction, with podcasts, with endless scrolling, with anything to avoid the perceived terror of our own silent company. But we have forgotten what the great mystics, artists, and thinkers throughout history have always known. Solitude is not the absence of society. It is the presence of soul. It is the necessary fertile ground for all deep work, all true creativity, and all genuine spiritual insight. It was in the solitude of the forest that the Buddha attained enlightenment. It was in the solitude of his study that Einstein revolutionized physics. It was in the solitude of a cabin by a pond that Thoreau heard the true pulse of life. They did not run from being alone. They ran towards it, for they knew it was the source of their greatest strength. Let me tell you the story of Elara. Elara was a gifted musician, a cellist whose life had always been defined by collaboration. From her childhood in a family orchestra, to her years in a prestigious conservatory quartet, to her career in a world-renowned symphony, she had never known what it was to make music alone. Her identity was woven into the fabric of the group. She found her pitch by listening to the violin, her rhythm by watching the conductor, her emotional expression by harmonizing with the viola. Her life was a constant, beautiful conversation with other musicians, and she loved it. Then, a sudden illness affecting the delicate nerves in her hand forced her to take an extended leave from the orchestra. For the first time in her life, she was untethered. Her days, once filled with the structure of rehearsals and the camaraderie of her fellow musicians, began a vast, terrifying expanse of silence. The silence of her apartment was deafening. She would pick up her cello, but the music felt hollow, a monologue instead of a dialogue. The loneliness was crushing. She felt like a single, stray note, disconnected from the grand symphony of life. She did what many of us do. She tried to fill the void. She filled her days with endless social engagements, with lunches and phone calls and television shows, anything to drown out the silence. But it was exhausting. And at the end of each day, the silence was still there, waiting for her, more menacing than before. One afternoon, after a particularly draining social lunch that had left her feeling emptier than ever, she came home and felt a sense of complete despair. She couldn't run anymore. Defeated, she walked into her music room, but instead of forcing herself to play, she simply sat in the chair, her cello leaning against its stand, and did nothing. She just sat in the silence. At first, it was agonizing. The old fears and stories surged. I'm useless now. I've lost my identity. No one understands. She felt the familiar ache of loneliness grip her chest. But this time, drawing on a sliver of wisdom she didn't know she had. She didn't fight it. She just watched it. Let it be there. like a storm passing outside her window. She sat like that for a long time. An hour passed. And then, in the deep quiet, something new began to emerge. Underneath the loud chatter of her fear, she began to hear a subtler sound. It was a melody, a faint, tentative wisp of music, unlike anything she had ever played before. It wasn't the symphony's music, or the quartet's music. It was quieter, stranger, more personal. It was her music. It had been there all along, but she had never been quiet enough to hear it. From that day on, her relationship with her time alone began to change. She stopped seeing it as an emptiness to be filled and started seeing it as a space to be explored. She would intentionally set aside hours each day for what she began to call her time in the forest. She would sit with her cello, not with the pressure to perform, but with the curiosity of a listener. She would play a single note and listen to it until it faded completely into the silence. She discovered textures and tones in her own instrument she had never noticed in the rush of the orchestra. The silence was no longer her enemy. It became her collaborator, the canvas upon which her own unique music could finally emerge. She filled notebooks with compositions that were raw, honest, and completely her own. When her hand finally healed and she was able to return to the symphony, she was a different person. She still loved the collaboration, the harmony, the shared energy of the group, but she was no longer dependent on it for her identity or her sense of worth. She was now anchored in her own source. She had discovered the wellspring of music within herself, a spring that could only be found in the quiet landscape of solitude. Her time alone was no longer a sign of her isolation. It was the secret of her strength. Ilara's journey is the journey from loneliness to solitude. It is the conscious decision to stop treating our time alone as a problem to be solved, and to start seeing it as a sacred space to be honored. This does not mean you must abandon your friends and family and become a hermit. It simply means cultivating a balance. It means carving out intentional time, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, to be truly and completely with yourself, without distraction. Turn off the phone, close the laptop, sit with a cup of tea, go for a walk in nature without headphones. Just be. In these moments of stillness, you give yourself an incredible gift. You allow your nervous system to reset. You allow the quiet voice of your own intuition to be heard. You discover your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own unique music. Separate from the overwhelming noise of the world, you learn that your own company can be a source of profound comfort, creativity, and joy. By reclaiming the beauty of stillness, you fundamentally alter the equation of your happiness. You cease to be a needy soul, desperately seeking validation from outside, and you become a self-possessed individual, capable of deep connection, precisely because you are no longer afraid of being alone. You have found the sanctuary within. This leads us to a new level of understanding. When we are comfortable in our own stillness, we can begin to see the world not as a collection of separate, isolated beings, but as a vast, interconnected field of being. We are ready to explore the profound wisdom of shunyata, or emptiness. We have discovered a profound sanctuary in the heart of stillness. By transforming our fear of being alone into a conscious embrace of solitude, We have found a quiet, inner home that does not depend on the world outside. And in this quiet, we may begin to notice the nature of the space itself. We call it emptiness. And that word, for most of us, is terrifying. It conjures images of lack, of loss, of a cold, desolate void. We feel an inner emptiness, and we immediately try to fill it because we believe it is a sign that something is terribly wrong. But what if the wisdom traditions of the East are pointing to a completely different kind of emptiness? What if the emptiness we fear is a misunderstanding, a shadow cast by a truth that is not terrifying, but is, in fact, the most liberating truth of all? This is our entry point into the great teaching of Shunyata, a Sanskrit word that translates as emptiness, but means something far richer than mere nothingness. To understand this, let us tell the story of Anya, a master potter. Anya was obsessed with a single, driving ambition to create one perfect pot that was entirely, uniquely, and completely her own. She wanted to craft an object that owed nothing to anyone or anything else, a pure expression of her isolated genius. She began her quest. First, she tried to find a unique clay, but realized that every clay came from the earth, shaped by ancient rivers and geological time. It was not hers. She tried to invent a new technique, but soon saw that every movement of her hands was an echo of the teachers who had taught her and the generations of potters who had come before them. Her knowledge was not hers alone. Frustrated, she decided the form itself would be her unique creation. She retreated to her studio for weeks, trying to imagine a shape that had never been seen before. But every curve she imagined seemed to be a memory of something else: the swell of a pregnant belly, the gentle slope of a hill at sunset, the form of a gourd from her garden. Even her inspiration was not truly her own. In a moment of despair, she felt she had failed. It was impossible. She could not create a single thing that was separate and self-contained. She sat defeated in her studio, looking at her shelves of failed pots. And then, as the afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the fine dust of clay in the air, her perspective shifted. She looked at a simple, elegant vase. She saw in its form not just her hands, but the hands of her teacher. She saw in its clay body the ancient mountains and the life-giving rain. She saw in its hardened, vitrified glaze the fire of the kiln and the wood from the forest that fed it. She saw in its very purpose the human need for beauty, the desire to hold water, to display flowers. The pot was not a singular, isolated object. It was a point of convergence, a temporary, beautiful gathering place for the entire universe. It was not empty of content. It was empty of a separate, independent self. And in that moment, Anya understood that this did not make the pot less precious. It made it infinitely more precious. It was a child of the cosmos. We are all like Anya's pot. We live with the deep, ingrained belief that we are separate, self-contained selves. We believe that this I is a solid, independent entity, moving through the world. But when we look closely, just as Anya looked at her pot, this separate self dissolves. Our bodies are made of the food, water, and air of this planet. We are literally borrowing the earth. Our language, our ideas, our beliefs, our music, our stories, they have all been given to us by the culture and the people who came before us. Our feelings are not generated in a vacuum. They are responses to our interactions with the world. Where, then, is this independent me that feels so lonely it cannot be found? What we call a self is like the pot, a temporary gathering, a process, a beautiful point of convergence for the entire universe. This is the meaning of shunyata. It is not that we are nothing, it is that we are empty of a separate, isolated existence. This is a crucial distinction. The feeling of emptiness that causes us pain is the feeling of lack. It is a sense of poverty. The wisdom of emptiness, or shunyata, points to a radical fullness. It is the emptiness of a cup, which is not a sad emptiness, but a useful emptiness, an emptiness that makes it possible for the cup to be filled. Because we are empty of a fixed, solid self. We are open to connection, to change, to love, to life itself. Perhaps the most helpful metaphor is that of a wave and the ocean. If you are a wave, you might feel very lonely out on the vast sea. You are born, you rise up, you have a brief, unique existence, and then you crash on the shore and die. It can feel like a very tragic and isolated journey. But if, for one moment, the wave were to look deeply into its own nature, it would realize a startling truth. There is no such thing as a separate wave. The wave is not made of water. The wave is water. The wave is a temporary expression of the entire ocean. It is empty of being a separate wave, but it is completely full of ocean. It was never separate from the ocean, and it can never die, because its true nature is the immortal, boundless ocean itself. This is our true nature. We think we are the lonely, separate wave, but our real identity is the vast, interconnected ocean of being. To take this vision to its most sublime conclusion, the Mahayana Buddhist tradition offers the breathtaking image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches to infinity in all directions. At every single node, every point where the threads cross, there hangs a single, brilliant, perfectly clear jewel. The net is structured in such a way that every individual jewel reflects on its polished surface every other jewel in the entire net. Not only that, but each of the reflections in that one jewel also contains all the other reflections, and so on, ad infinitum. When you look at one jewel, you see them all. When one jewel is touched, every other jewel in the infinite net trembles and shimmers in response. You are one of these jewels. I am one of these jewels. Every person, every animal, every tree, every speck of dust is one of these jewels. Your very existence is a reflection of all that is, and all that is reflects you. There is no true separation. The idea that you are a lonely, isolated fragment is a profound illusion. Your joy is reflected in my heart. My pain sends a vibration that reaches yours. The very fabric of reality is one of intimate, brilliant, and inescapable interconnection. Understanding this does not magically erase the feeling of loneliness when it arises, but it reframes it. It places it in a much larger, more magnificent context. The feeling of being a separate, lonely self is seen for what it is, a misunderstanding of our true nature. Like a wave forgetting it is the ocean. When we begin to glimpse the truth of our radical interconnectedness, the very concept of loneliness begins to lose its meaning. How can a jewel in Indra's net ever be truly alone? This insight into our shared being is not just a beautiful idea. It is based on a fundamental law of how things exist. The law of dependent origination, or pratitya samutpada, which we will now explore. We have stood in awe before the vision of Indra's net, that shimmering, infinite web of jewels, where each contains the reflection of all the others. It is a beautiful, sublime image of our interconnectedness, but it is more than just a beautiful metaphor. It is a picture of how reality actually functions. The vision of emptiness, or shunyata, is supported by a clear, logical, and observable law, a law that the Buddha considered to be at the very core of his discovery. This law is known as pratitya samutpada in Sanskrit, which can be translated as dependent origination, or perhaps even more poetically, as interdependent co-arising. This principle is the engine that runs the universe. It is the elegant mechanics behind the magic of Indra's net. At its heart, the law is breathtakingly simple and can be stated in a short formula. This is, because that is, this is not, because that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. What this means is that nothing, absolutely nothing, exists in isolation. Everything in existence arises in dependence upon other factors. It is conditioned by other things. Nothing has a separate, independent, self-contained existence. A thing is not just connected to everything else. Its very existence is its connections. To understand this in a way that is not abstract, but intimate and personal, let us take a simple object that you might have near you right now, a single sheet of paper. Let us ask the question, what is this sheet of paper on the surface? It seems simple. It is a thin, flat, white object. But let us look more deeply, with the eyes of dependent origination. For this sheet of paper to exist, there must first be a tree. But for the tree to exist, it needed many other things. It needed a seed, and it needed soil to grow in. It needed sunshine to power its growth through photosynthesis. So, if you look deeply into the sheet of paper, you can see the sunshine. The sunshine is in the paper. The tree also needed rain to drink. Without the clouds, there could be no rain. So, the clouds are also in the sheet of paper. Then, for the tree to become paper, there had to be a logger with an axe or a saw. The logger had to have parents who gave birth to him. He needed to eat his daily bread to have the strength to work. So the wheat field and the baker are also in the sheet of paper. The person who made his clothes is there. The miners who dug the iron ore to forge his saw are there. And then there is the paper mill, with all its workers, and the truck driver who brought the paper to the store. and the store clerk who sold it. The entire economy, all of human history, is present in this single sheet of paper. If you were to return any one of these elements to its source, if you return the sunshine to the sun, the rain to the clouds, the tree to the forest, the logger to his parents, this sheet of paper could not exist. It is empty of a separate, standalone paperness. Its entire being is composed of non-paper elements. It is inextricably woven into the fabric of the cosmos. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who taught this practice so beautifully, coined a new word to describe this reality. He said that paper cannot just be, it has to be with the sun, the rain, the logger, and everything else. Now, let us turn this compassionate investigation upon ourselves. Like the sheet of paper, we believe we are a separate self. We feel like an independent me, but are we, for you to be here right now, listening to these words? What was required first? You needed air to breathe. The air is a non-you element, yet without it, you would not exist for more than a few minutes. You needed water to drink and food to eat. That food came from the earth, was nourished by the sun and the rain. So, the sun, the clouds, and the entire planet are inside your body right now. You had parents and grandparents and an infinite chain of ancestors stretching back through time. They are all present in your DNA. You are speaking a language you did not invent. You are thinking with concepts and ideas that were taught to you by your family, your teachers, your culture. Everything you consider to be you is, in fact, a vast collection of non-you elements. The boundary we draw between ourselves and the world is a complete illusion. It is a convenient fiction, a line drawn in the sand that the tide of reality washes away with every breath we take. You cannot be by yourself, alone. You have to interbe with everything else. You are not a lonely noun, a static thing. You are an active verb. You are a process of interbeing. This understanding also transforms our relationship with our own feelings, especially the painful feeling of loneliness. We tend to think of loneliness as a solid, malevolent thing that invades us, a personal flaw or a sickness within our soul. But loneliness, too, is a dependently arisen phenomenon. It is empty of a separate existence. The feeling of loneliness does not arise from nowhere. It arises because of conditions. Perhaps you saw a picture of a happy couple, and that sight consciousness conditioned the arising of a thought about your own relationship status. That thought conditioned the arising of an unpleasant feeling in your chest. That feeling was then labeled by your perception as loneliness. The whole experience was a chain of dependent causes and effects. Because it arose from conditions, it is also subject to the law of cessation. When the conditions change, the feeling will change. This doesn't mean we can just snap our fingers and make it disappear, but it does mean that it is not a permanent stain on our being. It is not who we are. It is a conditioned, impersonal process, like the formation of a cloud in the sky. This insight frees us from the shame and self-blame that so often accompany loneliness. We stop seeing it as our personal failure and start seeing it with the curious eyes of a scientist. Ah, this feeling has arisen. I wonder What conditions brought it here today? The profound implication of all this is revolutionary. If your very existence is woven from the threads of the entire universe, and if everything in the universe is woven from the same threads, then the concept of being truly alone is a logical impossibility. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. You are not a lonely star in a cold, dark void. You are a point of light in a living, breathing cosmos where every point of light is intimately connected to all others. When we begin to truly feel this in our bones, not just as a philosophy but as a lived reality, our entire orientation to the world shifts. We see that the well-being of the tree is our well-being, the well-being of the river is our well-being, and the well-being of other people is our well-being. Their success does not diminish ours, their happiness does not take away from ours. When another jewel in Indra's net shines brightly, its light inevitably illuminates our own. This realization is the fertile ground for the next quality of heart we will cultivate, a quality that is the direct antidote to the poison of envy and the feeling of lack. We are now ready to learn how to rejoice in the happiness of others, to cultivate mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked a profound path together. We have seen that we are not a solid, separate self, but a flowing process. We have seen that this process is governed by the law of impermanence, that nothing is fixed. And most recently, we have seen that our very existence is not an isolated event, but a constant, intimate dance of interbeing with the entire cosmos. We are, in our very essence, interconnected. To truly understand this is to have the key to a radical transformation of the heart. If we are all jewels in the same infinite net, then the happiness of another is not a threat, but a beautiful reflection shining in our own heart. To feel this truth is to awaken the third of the four great divine abodes, the sublime quality of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Mudita is the practice of rejoicing in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the genuine, unselfish celebration of another's well-being, and in our modern world, it is perhaps the most radical and countercultural practice we can undertake. We live in a culture that is built on a foundation of comparison and competition. From a very young age, we are taught to measure our worth against the achievements of others. This conditioning becomes hypercharged in the digital age. We scroll through carefully curated feeds that function as relentless highlight reels of other people's lives, their perfect vacations, their beautiful families, their career successes, their romantic engagements. For a person feeling lonely or inadequate, this can be a form of exquisite torture. Each happy image can feel like a confirmation of our own lack, fueling the poisons of envy, jealousy, and resentment. These feelings come from a deep, often unconscious belief in scarcity. It is the mindset that happiness is a limited resource. Like a pie with only so many slices, if someone else gets a big slice of success or joy, we believe there is less left for us. This scarcity mindset is the direct result of the illusion of the separate self. When we believe we are an isolated competitor in the great game of life, then another's victory must feel like our loss. Mudita is the antidote. It is the practice of shifting from a mindset of scarcity to one of boundless abundance. It is the recognition that joy is not a finite resource to be hoarded. It is more like a flame. If you use your candle to light mine, your flame is not diminished. In fact, the total amount of light in the room has doubled. Mudita is the joyful practice of lighting as many candles as we can. Let me tell you the story of an old man named Matteo, who was the keeper of a small community garden tucked away in a busy city. Matteo's love was not just for his own patch of earth, but for the entire ecosystem of the garden. He saw it as a single, living being. He delighted in the shared work, the swapping of seeds, and the collective joy when the seasons brought their bounty. One spring, a young girl named Lila, whose family had just moved into the neighborhood, began to visit the garden. She was quiet and shy, and watched Matteo work with wide, curious eyes. Matteo, seeing a kindred spirit, took her under his wing. He taught her how to feel the soil, how to listen to the needs of the plants, and how to protect the tender seedlings. He gave her a small plot of her own and helped her plant a single sunflower seed. All summer long, they tended the garden together. Matteo's own tomatoes were famously delicious, and his zucchini plants were wildly productive. But he seemed to take the most pleasure in watching Lila's sunflower grow. It grew with an almost magical vitality, quickly surpassing all the other plants in the garden. By late summer, it was a magnificent giant, its great head heavy with seeds, towering over the fence, a brilliant, golden beacon of life. It was, by far, the most spectacular thing in the entire garden that year. One evening, as the community gathered for a small harvest festival, everyone praised Lila's amazing sunflower. She stood beside it, beaming with a pride and joy that made her seem to shine as brightly as the flower itself. A neighbor turned to Matteo and said, half-jokingly, "Aren't you a little bit jealous? Matteo, that little girl's first flower has outshone everything you've grown this year." Matteo looked at the man, then at Lila's radiant face, then at the glorious sunflower, and he laughed. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated delight. "Jealous," he said, his eyes twinkling. "My friend, my deepest wish was for this garden to be full of life and beauty. Her joy does not take away from mine. Seeing her happiness, seeing the beauty she has brought into this world with her own two hands, that is the finest harvest I could ever ask for. Her joy is my joy." Matteo's heart is a heart of mudita. He understands that life is not a competition, but a collaboration. His sense of self is not confined to his own small plot of land. It extends to the entire garden. This is the shift we can practice in our own lives. How do we cultivate this quality like the other heart practices? We start with someone easy. Bring to mind a dear friend, someone you genuinely love. Now, imagine something wonderful happening to them. Perhaps they get the job they've been dreaming of. Perhaps they fall deeply in love. Perhaps they achieve a creative breakthrough. Picture their face, radiant with happiness, instead of letting even a flicker of "why not me" arise. You intentionally lean into the joy. You silently say to them, "How wonderful for you. I am so happy for what you have achieved. May your joy and good fortune continue and grow. Feel the genuine warmth of that wish. It costs you nothing, and yet it fills your heart with a spacious, generous joy. After practicing with loved ones, you can expand the circle. Think of an acquaintance or a colleague. You hear they've had some good news. Notice the mind's habitual tendency to compare or compete. Acknowledge it without judgment. There is the old habit of comparison. And then gently pivot to the intention of mudita. They are a being who, just like me, wants to be happy. How wonderful that they have found a cause for happiness. May they enjoy it. The most advanced practice, of course, is to direct mudita towards someone whose success normally triggers your deepest envy, perhaps a rival, or someone you feel has succeeded unfairly. This is difficult, but the practice is to see that your envy is a fire that only burns you. It does not affect them at all. The practice is to notice the painful sting of envy, and then, as an act of profound self-care, to try and wish them well. It is an act of liberation for your own heart. When you practice mudita while scrolling through social media, the entire experience is transformed. Instead of a machine for generating envy, your phone becomes a tool for generating blessings. You see a photo of a beautiful trip, and you think, how wonderful. May they have a safe and joyful journey. You see an announcement of a new baby, and you think, may this family be filled with health and happiness. You are no longer impoverished by the good fortune of others. You are enriched by it. Your capacity for happiness is no longer limited to the small, often infrequent successes of your own life. With mudita, your heart gains access to the boundless joy and good fortune of the entire world. We have now cultivated metta, the wish for all beings to be happy. We have cultivated karuna, the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. And we have cultivated mudita, the ability to rejoice in the happiness that beings find. Our hearts are now wide open, capable of holding both the world's sorrow and its joy. But to hold so much, to be so open, requires a profound stability and balance. An open heart that is not balanced can be easily overwhelmed, tossed about on the waves of pleasure and pain. Therefore, we must now cultivate the fourth and final divine abode, the quality that holds all the others in a state of unshakable peace. We are now ready to practice upekkha, or equanimity. We have opened our hearts. With metta, we learn to radiate the unconditional warmth of the sun, wishing for all beings to be happy. With karuna, we learn to tremble with a wise compassion, wishing for all beings to be free from suffering. With mudita, we learn to light 1,000 candles from our own, rejoicing in the good fortune we see in the world. Our hearts are now vast, capable of holding both the sorrow and the joy of existence. But a heart that is so wide open can be vulnerable. It can be like a ship with vast sails, capable of catching tremendous wind, but also susceptible to being tossed and capsized by the violent, ever-changing weather of life. An open heart, to be truly effective, must also be a stable heart. This is where we cultivate the fourth and final of the divine abodes, the quality that brings all the others into perfect, unshakable balance. This is the crowning virtue of upekkha, or equanimity. The moment we hear the word equanimity, a red flag of caution often goes up. We mistake it for indifference, for apathy, for cold, detached aloofness. We imagine a person who simply doesn't care, who has shut down their heart to avoid being hurt. This is a profound misunderstanding. Indifference is a state of numbness, born from fear or aversion. It is a closing down of the heart. Equanimity is the opposite. It is the result of a heart that is so wide open, so full of wisdom, that it is no longer thrown off balance by the constant flux of pleasure and pain. Indifference is the stony heart that feels nothing. Equanimity is the heart of a great mountain, which feels every gust of wind but is not moved by it. It is rooted in a deep understanding of the way things are. To truly grasp this quality, let us imagine the life of a woman named Eva, the captain of a small ship that sailed the merchant routes of a great sea. Eva did not just work on the sea, she loved it with a fierce and knowing passion. On calm, sun-drenched days, when the water was like glass and dolphins raced alongside the bow, her heart was filled with a boundless joy, a deep sense of connection to the beauty of her world. This was her mudita and her metta when the fog rolled in, thick and disorienting, or when she saw another vessel in distress. A deep and urgent care would arise in her heart. She felt the fear and the danger in her own bones. This was her karuna. But what made Eva a great captain, what her crew trusted with their very lives, was not just her love for the sea or her empathy for its dangers. It was her unshakable core of calm when a sudden squall would descend, when the sky would turn black and the waves would rise like angry mountains. Eva did not panic. She was not indifferent to the danger. On the contrary, she was more keenly aware of it than anyone. But her mind became incredibly still and clear. She felt the ship pitch and roll. She heard the wind scream in the rigging. But she was not swept away by the fear. Her equanimity was her anchor, because her heart was steady. She could read the waves. She could feel the shift in the wind. She could give the right commands to her crew to steer the ship through the heart of the storm. Likewise, on those perfect, calm days, she did not become complacent or drunk on the beauty of the moment. She enjoyed it fully, but a part of her was always watchful, always aware that the sea's nature is to change. Her peace did not depend on the weather being good. Her peace was an inner quality, a deep trust in her own ability to meet whatever the sea would offer. Her equanimity was born not of a lack of feeling, but of a profound, experiential understanding of the sea's true nature. We are all captains of our own small ships, sailing the great sea of life, and we are constantly buffeted by what the Buddhist teachings call the 8 worldly winds. These are the unavoidable, universal pairs of opposites that blow upon every human life: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. Like the weather, we have no ultimate control over when these winds will blow. One day, we receive praise at work, and we are inflated with pleasure and pride. The next day, we receive criticism, and we are deflated by pain and shame. One moment we experience the gain of a new relationship. The next, the loss of a treasured possession, our happiness rises and falls with these external conditions. Just like a ship without a skilled captain, equanimity is the skill of navigating these winds without capsizing. It is the deep, internal stability that comes from understanding the laws of reality we have already explored. It is seeing with unwavering clarity that all these states are impermanent. This too shall pass. It is understanding that our true well-being does not depend on being praised, or on gaining fame, or on experiencing only pleasure. These are fleeting, conditioned states. True peace is found in the calm center of the heart that can experience all of them without being owned by them. This profound balance is what makes the other three divine abodes wise and sustainable. Without equanimity, metta, or loving kindness, can easily curdle into attachment and clinging. We love someone, and so we want them to always be with us, to always make us happy, and we suffer when they change or leave. Equanimity brings wisdom to our love, allowing us to love freely, without grasping, honoring the other person's freedom and their own journey. Without equanimity, karuna, or compassion, can degenerate into overwhelming grief or compassion fatigue. We see so much suffering in the world that we drown in it, becoming paralyzed and burned out. Equanimity provides the stable container for our compassion, allowing us to care deeply and act effectively without losing ourselves in the sorrow. Without equanimity, mudita, or sympathetic joy, can become a kind of restless, giddy excitement, or it can be tinged with the subtle poison of comparison. Equanimity allows us to rejoice in another's happiness with a steady, genuine heart, celebrating their good fortune without it agitating our own sense of peace. So, how do we practice this? We can begin, as with the other heart practices, by using phrases. But the phrases for equanimity point towards this profound wisdom. You can bring to mind a friend, a neutral person, and a difficult person. And for each one, you can offer this reflection. You are the owner of your actions, the heir to your actions. Your happiness and suffering arise from your own thoughts, words, and deeds, not from my wishes for you. At first, this might sound cold, but it is one of the most respectful and liberating thoughts we can have. It is a radical acceptance of the other person's agency and their own life path. It frees us from the arrogant and exhausting burden of trying to control everyone's life. It is saying, I care for you deeply. I wish you well, but I release you to your own journey. The deepest practice of equanimity, however, is found in the silent observation of our own minds. It is the practice of simply watching the 8 worldly winds as they blow through our own experience. You sit in meditation, and a pleasant feeling arises. You note it pleasant. You watch it without clinging. Then it passes. An unpleasant feeling of boredom or restlessness arises. You note it unpleasant. You watch it without aversion. Then it, too, passes. You are training your mind, moment by moment, not to be a victim of your own experience, but to be the calm, spacious, and wise witness of it all. You are becoming the mountain. You are becoming the deep ocean. you are becoming Captain Eva, steady at the helm. With this unshakable peace as our foundation, our relationships with the world are transformed. We can love more purely, serve more effectively, and rejoice more freely. We have cultivated a balanced heart and a stable mind. Now, with this inner strength, we are truly ready to turn our attention outwards again, to explore how to skillfully build and nurture the relationships that support this path, to seek the companionship of those who are also sailing towards the same distant shore of wisdom. We are ready to understand the importance of Kalyanamitta, of spiritual friendship. We have built for ourselves an extraordinary inner home through the cultivation of the 4 divine abodes: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We have constructed a sanctuary of the heart, a place of profound peace and stability that does not depend on the shifting winds of the external world. We have become the mountain, steady and serene. It might seem, then, that the journey is complete, that the goal is to remain in this solitary inner fortress, invulnerable and untouched. But the Buddha taught that wisdom is not a fortress to hide in. It is a home from which we engage with the world more skillfully and more lovingly. Having cultivated this inner strength, we must now turn our attention outwards again, but with a new and discerning eye. We must learn to choose the companions and the company that will protect and nurture our fragile, growing wisdom. We are now ready to explore the immeasurable value of Kalyanamitta, or noble spiritual friendship. There is a powerful story in which the Buddha's faithful attendant, Ananda, who had been by his side for decades and had heard every teaching, approached him with a great realization. "Venerable Sir," Ananda said, his face bright with insight, "I have been reflecting, and it seems to me that having admirable friends, admirable companions, and admirable comrades is fully half of the holy life." The Buddha turned to him and gave a surprising and profound correction. "Say not so, Ananda, say not so. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable comradeship is actually the whole of the holy life. When a monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades, he can be expected to develop and pursue the noble eightfold path." This statement is radical. Not half, but the whole. What could this possibly mean? It means that the path to enlightenment is not a solitary endeavor. While the work must be done within our own hearts and minds, the context in which we do that work is absolutely critical. The people we surround ourselves with are not just background characters in our story. They are the very soil in which the seeds of our practice will either flourish or wither and die. We must learn to distinguish between 2 kinds of friendship. The first, and most common, is the friendship of mutual distraction. These are our co-conspirators in avoiding our own discomfort when we feel the ache of loneliness or the sting of anxiety. These are the friends who say, "Let's go get a drink. Let's go shopping. Let's complain about our bosses. Let's gossip about someone else." Their intention is often kind. They want to make us feel better. But the better they offer is a temporary numbing, a fleeting escape. This kind of friendship, while it may provide comfort, ultimately keeps us stuck on the wheel of suffering. It reinforces our habits of aversion and craving, and keeps us from looking at the true nature of our own minds. Akaluyana mitta. A noble friend is something entirely different. A noble friend is not afraid of your silence. They do not feel the need to fill every empty space with noise and distraction. They are a clear and honest mirror. They reflect back to you, not your neuroses or your fleeting moods, but your highest potential. When you are acting from a place of wisdom and kindness, they celebrate it and encourage it. When you are acting from a place of fear, greed, or anger, they are not afraid to gently, compassionately point it out. They hold you to your own highest standard, not because they are judgmental, but because they believe in the brilliant jewel that lies within you. A noble friend is someone with whom you can share your spiritual aspirations, your struggles on the path, your small victories of awareness, knowing that you will be met not with ridicule or indifference, but with understanding and respect. The archetypal story of spiritual friendship in the Buddhist tradition is the beautiful bond between the two men who would become the Buddha's chief disciples. Sariputta and Moggallana, in their youth, they were brilliant ascetics named Upatissa and Kalita, best friends who were deeply disillusioned with the spiritual teachers of their time. They felt that none of them knew the ultimate truth, the path to the deathless state. They made a solemn pact with each other. Whichever of them should find the true path first would immediately return and share it with the other. One day, Sariputta was walking through a village when he saw a monk on his arms round. He was struck dumb by the man's extraordinary presence. Every movement was filled with a profound peace and a radiant serenity. This monk, named Asei, was one of the Buddha's first 5 disciples. Sariputta approached him respectfully and asked, "Friend, your demeanor is so clear and bright. Who is your teacher? And what does he teach?" Asaji, being a new monk, was humble. He replied, "I cannot explain the deep doctrine to you, but I can tell you its essence." He then uttered a short verse that would change the world, a verse summarizing the law of dependent origination, of all things that arise from a cause. The teacher has told the cause and also what their cessation is. This is the doctrine of the great ascetic. Upon hearing just these few lines, the vast wisdom of the Buddha's teaching flashed through Sariputta's mind. In that instant, he attained the first stage of enlightenment, the level of stream entry, the truth of interconnectedness, of cause and effect, became his direct experience. His first thought was not of his own glorious achievement. His first thought was of his friend. He remembered his pact. He rushed to find Moggallana, who saw him approaching and immediately knew something profound had happened. "Friend," Moggallana exclaimed, "your face is so clear and radiant. Have you found the deathless?" "Yes." "Friend, I have," Sariputta replied, and he recited the verse he had just heard. As Moggallana listened, the same profound insight arose in him, and he, too, attained stream entry on the spot. Their friendship did not just provide comfort, it was the very vehicle of their liberation. Together, they went to find the Buddha and became the leaders of his monastic community. forever supporting each other on the path. This is the power of Kalyana Mitta. We lift each other up, we hold each other accountable, we remind each other of the path when we stray. This concept expands from a single friend to the wider community, which is known as the Sangha. The Sangha is considered so vital that it is one of the 3 jewels, or 3 refuges, that a Buddhist turns to for guidance. Alongside the Buddha, the example of the awakened mind, and the Dharma, the teachings themselves, the Sangha is the community of fellow travelers on the path. In our modern world, a Sangha does not have to be a monastery in the mountains. It can be a local meditation group that meets once a week. It can be a book club dedicated to reading spiritual texts. It can even be just 1 or 2 trusted friends with whom you can be completely honest about your inner life. It is any group of people who have come together with a shared intention to cultivate wisdom and compassion, to sit in a room with others who are also committed to this quiet, internal work. Is an incredibly powerful experience. The silence is not empty. It is filled with a collective intention that strengthens and supports your own. Seeking out this kind of companionship is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of profound wisdom. It is recognizing that we are conditioned beings, deeply influenced by our environment. To consciously choose to place ourselves in an environment that nourishes our best qualities is one of the most intelligent things we can do. It is like a gardener understanding that a delicate orchid cannot be planted in a windswept, barren field. It needs the protective, humid, and nurturing environment of a greenhouse. The Sangha is our spiritual greenhouse. With our hearts fortified by equanimity and our journey supported by noble friendship, we are no longer acting from a place of lack or need. We are acting from a place of fullness. We begin to see that the greatest joy is not in receiving, but in giving. This leads us to the final transformative practice on our journey, the practice of dissolving the very last vestiges of the separate self through the act of generosity. The path of Dana. We have walked a long and transformative road. We have journeyed deep into the landscape of our own minds, cultivating the boundless heart of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the unshakable peace of equanimity. We have learned to seek out the companionship of noble friends who support and cherish our growth. We have moved from a place of perceived lack and loneliness to a place of inner fullness and outer support. The question that naturally arises now is, what do we do with this newfound fullness? What is the natural expression of a heart that is stable, compassionate, and understands its profound connection to all of life? The answer is simple: joyful. And it is the practice that most powerfully dissolves the final, stubborn vestiges of the separate self. It is the practice of Dana, the path of generosity and giving. In our modern culture, we often think of giving as a formal transaction, a duty, or an act of charity reserved for special occasions. We write a check to a cause we believe in. We donate old clothes to a thrift store. We put some cash in a donation box. While these are all wholesome actions, the Buddhist understanding of Dana is infinitely more vast, more subtle, and more integrated into the fabric of daily life. Dana is not just an act, it is an attitude. It is the joyful, voluntary, and heartfelt expression of a generous spirit, a spirit that recognizes the truth of interbeing and finds its greatest happiness not in accumulating, but in sharing. The Buddha spoke of three main types of giving. The first, and most familiar, is the giving of material things. This is the gift of food to the hungry, shelter to the homeless, medicine to the sick, or financial support to those in need. This form of dana is essential, for it alleviates real, tangible suffering in the world. But even here, the teaching emphasizes that the quality of the intention behind the gift is far more important than the material value of the gift itself. A small crust of bread given with a heart full of love and respect is a far greater act of dana than a fortune given for the sake of public recognition or to ease a guilty conscience. The second, and higher, form of giving is what is known as abhaya dana, the gift of fearlessness. This is the gift of giving safety, protection, and security to other beings. When you see a spider in your house and, instead of killing it, you gently trap it and release it outside, you have given the gift of fearlessness. When a friend is consumed by anxiety and you sit with them, your calm and steady presence offering a non-judgmental space for their fear. You are giving the gift of fearlessness when you stand up for someone who is being bullied or unjustly accused. You are giving the gift of fearlessness. It is the act of using your strength, not to dominate, but to shield and protect those who are vulnerable. But the highest, most precious gift of all is the Dharma dana, the gift of the teaching. This does not mean proselytizing or trying to convert anyone. It means sharing the path of wisdom and compassion with those who are ready and interested to hear it. It could mean sharing a book that has helped you, forwarding a guided meditation to a friend who is struggling, or simply living your life in such a way that your own peace and kindness inspires others to ask, what is your secret when you share the tools that can lead someone to their own liberation from suffering? You are giving a gift that is truly priceless and timeless. Beyond these three, the opportunities for dana in our daily lives are infinite. The gift of our full, undivided, and patient attention when someone needs to talk is one of the most profound acts of generosity we can offer in this distracted world. The gift of a genuine, unforced smile to a stranger, the gift of a sincere compliment, the gift of forgiveness, releasing someone from the prison of our resentment and freeing ourselves in the process, the gift of our time, our energy, our skills. Every moment presents an opportunity to move from the closed fist of me and mine to the open hand of giving. Why is this simple act so transformative? Because it is a direct assault on the fortress of the ego. The sense of a separate self is constructed and maintained by the motions of grasping, clinging, and accumulating. I am what I have. I need to get more to be happy. This is mine. Every single act of dana is the opposite motion. It is an act of letting go, of releasing, of recognizing that nothing truly belongs to us anyway. With each genuine act of giving, a brick is loosened from the wall of the ego, and a little more light comes streaming in. It is the practice of experiencing, not just understanding, the truth of not self. It creates a direct and tangible connection between you and the person you are giving to, making the reality of interbeing palpable. There is no story that illustrates the power of pure intention in giving more beautifully than that of the poor old woman and her single lamp. a great festival was being held in honor of the Buddha, and for days, wealthy patrons, merchants, and even kings came to the monastery to make offerings. They lit thousands of magnificent lamps, crafted from gold and silver, filled with the most expensive, fragrant oils. Their combined light turned the night into day. Living in the city was a destitute old woman who had nothing at all. Seeing the splendor of the offerings, a powerful faith arose in her, and she longed to make an offering of her own. She spent the entire day begging on the streets, and by nightfall, she had managed to collect only a single, tiny copper coin. She took the coin not to a food stall to ease her own hunger, but to an oil seller's shop. The shopkeeper, seeing her ragged clothes, was about to turn her away, but she pleaded with him, explaining her wish to make an offer to the Buddha. Moved by her piety, he gave her the smallest possible amount of the cheapest oil in a simple, cracked clay lamp. She took her humble offering to the monastery, finding a place amongst the thousands of dazzling, ornate lamps. She lit her tiny flame. As she did, she made a powerful, silent vow from the depths of her heart. I have nothing to offer but this tiny light. I am poor, old, and have nothing, but I offer this with all that I am. May the merit of this act serve to illuminate the path for all beings, to dispel the darkness of ignorance and bring them to enlightenment. That night, a fierce storm swept through the region. A great wind howled through the monastery grounds, extinguishing every single one of the magnificent lamps lit by the wealthy and the powerful. But when the monks awoke the next morning, they saw a single, tiny flame still burning, clear, steady, and bright, untouched by the storm. When the Buddha was told of this miracle, he explained, the great lamps of the wealthy were lit with expensive oil, but their hearts may have been filled with pride or a desire for recognition. Their giving was from their surplus. This old woman gave everything she had. She gave her entire world. Her lamp was not fueled by simple oil. It was fueled by a boundless heart of compassion and a pure, selfless intention. That is a light that no storm can ever extinguish. This is the path of Dharma. It is the understanding that the value of the gift lies not in its size, but in the size of the heart that gives it. It is the joyful realization that in giving, we are not losing anything, but are in fact participating in the abundant, generous flow of life itself. The act of giving breaks the spell of scarcity and loneliness. It affirms our connection, celebrates our abundance, and fills the heart with a clean, noble joy that no amount of getting can ever provide. As we integrate this practice into our lives, our perspective continues to shift. We have learned to cultivate our inner world, to seek wise companionship, and to act in the world from a place of generosity. The final step is to dissolve the boundary between practice time and ordinary life completely, to learn to weave this thread of awareness into every single moment. No matter how mundane, we are now ready to explore the art of mindfulness in all activities. We have walked a truly transformative path together. We have cultivated a heart of boundless love and equanimity. We have sought the support of noble friends, and we have discovered the profound joy of generosity. It might seem that we now have all the pieces for a peaceful life. And yet, many who walk this path encounter a common and frustrating problem. We may experience deep peace, clarity, and connection during our 20 minutes of formal meditation on the cushion. But the moment we get up and re-engage with the demands of our day, that peace seems to evaporate. We are once again caught in the old habits of distraction, reactivity, and the frantic chatter of the mind. There seems to be a great chasm between our meditation life and our real life. The secret to bridging this chasm, to truly integrating this wisdom into our being, lies in understanding that meditation is not just something we do, it is a way that we can be. The goal is not simply to meditate more, but to live more mindfully. This is the practice of turning our entire life into a meditation, of weaving the thread of awareness into the very fabric of our daily activities. It is the art of leaving the cushion behind and taking the practice with us. Into the kitchen, into the office, into every corner of our existence. What does it mean to be mindful in all activities? It does not mean walking around in a slow motion, trance-like state. It is much simpler and more profound than that. It means bringing a gentle, non-judgmental attention to whatever is happening in the present moment. It means closing the gap between your mind and your body, so that your awareness is in the same place as your physical self. Most of the time, our bodies are in one place, washing the dishes. For example, while our minds are in another, lost in worries about the future or regrets about the past. To be mindful is to simply bring your mind home to your body and to be fully present for the life that is unfolding right here, right now. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this. A student approached a great Zen master and asked, "Master, you seem to be always so serene and present. What is the special secret to your practice?" The master replied, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student was confused. "But master," he said, "isn't that what everyone does?" The master smiled gently. "No," he replied. "When most people eat, they are not truly eating. They are thinking of 1,000 other things. They are worrying about work. They are planning their evening. They are replaying a conversation in their heads. Their body is eating, but their mind is elsewhere. When most people try to sleep, they are not truly sleeping. They are churning over the day's events or anxiously anticipating the morrow. When I eat, I am just eating. My mind, my body, my awareness are all engaged in the act of eating. When I sleep, I am just sleeping. There is nothing else. This is the heart of the practice. It is the art of doing one thing at a time. With our full being, we can begin with the simplest of daily rituals. Let us take, for example, the act of drinking a cup of tea. Usually, this is something we do on autopilot while checking emails or watching the news. A mindful cup of tea is a completely different experience. You can begin by simply holding the cup in your hands. Feel its warmth spreading into your palms. Notice its weight, its texture. Lift the cup and see the steam rising, dancing in the air. Bring it closer and inhale its fragrance. Then, take a small sip. Don't just swallow it. Let the liquid rest in your mouth for a moment. Notice its taste, its temperature, its feel on your tongue. Feel it as you swallow. A warm stream flowing down into your body. In these few moments, you have done nothing extraordinary, but you have done something radical. You have been fully present for your life. In your cup of tea, you can see the whole universe, the clouds, the rain, the sun, the farmer, the potter, all the elements of interbeing we have discussed. The simple act of drinking becomes a profound meditation on connection. We can apply this same principle to any activity. Take walking. Usually, walking is just a way of getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. Our minds consumed with our destination, but we can practice mindful walking. As you walk, bring your attention to the soles of your feet. Feel the sensation of your foot connecting with the ground, the rolling of your weight from heel to toe, the lifting off. You don't have to walk in slow motion. Just feel the rhythm. Notice the feeling of the air on your skin, the sounds of the world around you, the sights that you pass. You are not rushing to get somewhere else. You are simply arriving, again and again, in the present moment. With each step, even the most mundane chores can be transformed into opportunities for peace. Consider washing the dishes, an activity many of us dislike and rush through. What would it be like to wash the dishes just to wash the dishes? Not to get to the end of it. You can feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You can notice the slippery texture of the soap. You can pay attention to the circular motion of the sponge on the plate. You can hear the sound of the water, the gentle clink of the dishes. In that moment of complete absorption in the simple, sensory reality of washing a dish, the chattering mind goes quiet. The stories of "I am lonely," "I am a failure," "I am not good enough," cannot survive. They are constructs of thought. But the feeling of warm water on your skin is real. It is present. By anchoring yourself in this tangible reality, you find a refuge from the tyranny of your own thoughts. This practice of informal mindfulness is what truly changes our lives. It fills the so-called empty moments of our day with a sense of richness and presence. It reveals the hidden beauty in the mundane. Life becomes more vivid, more colorful, more real, and most importantly, it systematically dismantles the illusion of the lonely self. The self that feels lonely is the self that is lost in thought, the self that is telling itself stories. When you are fully present with the taste of a strawberry, or the feeling of your feet on the earth, or the sound of the rain, that storytelling self recedes. You are no longer trapped in the prison of your own narrative. You are free, participating directly in the vibrant, ever-changing flow of life. The goal, then, is not to escape from our lives, but to become more fully present for our lives. Every moment becomes an opportunity to wake up, brushing your teeth, waiting in line, listening to a friend, feeling the sun on your face. Each is an invitation to come home to the present. By finding this profound richness in the small, ordinary moments of our existence, we become less dependent on grand, external events for our happiness and peace. We discover that the universe is not something distant and remote. It is right here, waiting to be noticed in the details of our immediate experience. This leads us to our next exploration, learning to see the whole cosmos, not just in a cup of tea, but in every single particle of the natural world around us. We have learned to bring the quiet dignity of meditative awareness into the most ordinary corners of our lives. We have discovered that a cup of tea, a short walk, or the simple act of washing a dish can become a profound practice of presence, a portal to peace that is always available. We have grounded ourselves in the reality of our immediate human world. Now, we are ready to take this same quality of deep, gentle attention and expand it outwards, beyond the walls of our homes and into the great, living temple that surrounds us all. We are ready to learn from the ultimate teacher of impermanence, interbeing, and selfless existence, the natural world itself. For millennia, wisdom traditions have understood that nature is not merely a resource to be exploited or a beautiful backdrop for human drama. It is a living scripture, a Dharma text written in a language of leaves and stone, of wind and water. To learn to read this text is to understand the deepest truths of our own existence. We need only to learn how to be still, how to look, and how to listen. First, nature is our most patient and constant teacher of anicca, or impermanence. Our minds resist the truth of change. We want things to stay the same, but nature never lies. It displays the beautiful, inevitable dance of arising and passing away in every moment. Look at a single flower in a garden. You can witness its entire life cycle, the tight promise of the bud, the glorious, vibrant unfolding of the bloom, the slow, graceful wilting of the petals, and its final, generous return to the soil to nourish new life. The seasons turn in a majestic, predictable cycle of birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. A river is never the same river twice. A mountain is slowly, imperceptibly, being worn down into sand. By spending time in nature, we absorb this truth not as a harsh philosophy, but as a gentle, rhythmic reality. It teaches our nervous system that change is not a threat. It is simply the pulse of life itself. Nature is also the supreme illustration of anatta, not self, and pratitya samutpada, interdependent co-arising. A forest, for example, is the perfect picture of a sangha. On the surface, it appears to be a collection of individual, competing trees. But look deeper. The trees are in constant communication through vast, underground networks of fungi, sharing nutrients and information. The tallest trees provide shade for the delicate ferns below. The falling leaves create the rich soil that nourishes the insects. The insects feed the birds, who in turn spread the seeds of new trees. Nothing exists in isolation. Every single element is utterly dependent on all the other elements. The health of the one is the health of the all. Seeing this complex, selfless dance of mutual support, we begin to understand that our human illusion of being a separate, competitive self is a profound deviation from the universal law. Nature shows us that true strength lies not in rugged individualism, but in radical interconnectedness. The great English poet William Blake encapsulated this vision with his immortal lines, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." This is not just poetry. It is a precise instruction for mindful contemplation. We can learn to practice this. Go outside. Find a single, ordinary object of nature. Let us say you pick up a single leaf that has fallen from a tree. Don't just glance at it. Really look at it. See the central vein, like a great river, and the smaller veins branching off like tributaries. The very pattern of life. See the vibrant green, the residue of the sunshine it has consumed. See the small imperfections, the mark of an insect, a tear from the wind, the story of its life. Contemplate its journey. It began as a tiny bud. It drank the rain. It danced in the wind. It provided shade. And now, its work is done, and it is letting go, returning to the earth to become part of the soil that will feed the tree for its next cycle of growth. In this single, ordinary leaf, you can see the sun, the clouds, the earth, the wind, and the entire cycle of the seasons. You can see the whole universe. Or perhaps you pick up a small, smooth stone from a riverbed. Hold it in the palm of your hand. Contemplate its journey. This stone may be millions of years old. It may have been part of a great mountain, broken off by ice, and tumbled for centuries by the patient, persistent action of water, its sharp edges worn away into a smooth, serene calmness. It has borne witness to the rise and fall of civilizations. It teaches us about patience, about endurance, about the transformative power of gentle, relentless forces. In its silent, solid presence, there is a profound peace. How does this practice heal the wound of loneliness? In several profound ways. Firstly, it puts our personal suffering into perspective. When you stand at the edge of the ocean and contemplate its vastness, or look up at a clear night sky and try to fathom the billions of stars, the story of your own small, lonely self, with all its anxieties and dramas, naturally shrinks. It doesn't disappear, but it loses its all-consuming importance. You see it as one small part of a magnificent, immeasurable whole. Secondly, it is a direct and powerful form of connection. Loneliness stems from the feeling of being separate, of being an outsider looking in. When you truly connect with the natural world, that feeling of separation dissolves. You realize you are not an alien on this planet. You are this planet. The same iron that gives your blood its red color was forged in the heart of a dying star. The water that makes up most of your body is the same water that flows in the rivers and falls as rain. You are not separate from nature. You are nature, experiencing itself. You are at home in the universe, and you have been all along. Finally, there is an innate healing resonance in nature. The steady, unhurried rhythm of the natural world can calm our frantic, overstimulated nervous systems. The silence of a forest can soothe the noisy chatter of our minds. We did not evolve in concrete boxes, staring at screens. We evolved in intimate relationship with the earth. the sky, and the other creatures of this world. To return to nature is to return to ourselves. By learning to see the universe in a grain of sand, we cultivate a deep sense of wonder, belonging, and peace. We find that the world is not a cold, empty place, but a vibrant, intelligent, and deeply interconnected web of life, and that we are an integral part of its beauty. This deep and loving acceptance of the world as it is provides us with the final key we need to transform our own suffering. If we can learn to find such profound wisdom and beauty in a simple leaf or a stone, perhaps we are now ready to find the teacher hidden within our deepest pain. We are now ready to learn how to be grateful for our own loneliness. We have come to a truly remarkable place on our journey. We have learned to quiet the mind, to open the heart, to find support in wise community, to act from a place of generosity, and to see the sacred in the mundane fabric of our lives and in the natural world. We have assembled a powerful toolkit for meeting our suffering with grace and wisdom. And now, we arrive at what may seem to be the most paradoxical and challenging turn in the path. Having worked so diligently to soothe, understand, and transform our loneliness, we are now going to learn how to turn around, look it directly in the eye, and say, with all the sincerity in our hearts, thank you. This is not a call for masochism. It is not about pretending that pain isn't painful. It is the final, most profound stage of alchemy, where we learn to see the very agent of our deepest suffering not as an enemy, but as our most potent and uncompromising teacher. Think of the toughest teacher you ever had in school, the one who pushed you harder than anyone else, who refused to accept your excuses, who pointed out your flaws with uncomfortable precision. At the time, you may have resented them, but years later, you look back and realize that their fierce, demanding guidance was the very thing that forged your strength and unlocked a potential you never knew you had. Loneliness has been that teacher for us. It did not coddle us. It did not allow us to remain complacent. It plunged us into the fire, and in doing so, it forced us to become masters of our own inner world. Let us look back at the lessons this stern teacher has taught us. It was loneliness that first gave us the motivation to embark on this journey at all. If our lives had been a constant stream of comfortable connection and easy pleasure, would we ever have been forced to look deeper? Would we have ever felt the need to understand the nature of the mind? It was the sharp, undeniable pain of our isolation that served as the divine messenger, signaling that our ordinary way of living was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Loneliness was the grit in the system that made us stop and say, there must be another way. It was loneliness that served as our living laboratory for understanding the Four Noble Truths. It gave us a direct, undeniable experience of dukkha, the truth of unsatisfactoriness. It was the teacher that stripped away all our distractions and forced us to confront our own tanha, our desperate thirst and craving for connection. We saw, in our own frantic attempts to fill the void, the very mechanism of the hungry ghost. Without loneliness, these truths might have remained abstract philosophies. Loneliness made them real, personal, and urgent. It was loneliness that prompted us to ask the most liberating question: who is it that is lonely in seeking the owner of this pain? We were led directly to the profound wisdom of anatta, not self. We searched for a solid, separate self and found only a flowing process of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The lonely me dissolved under the light of our investigation, and it was loneliness that gave us a masterclass in anicca, impermanence. We learned to watch the feeling of loneliness arise, intensify, and eventually fade, seeing for ourselves that it was not a permanent stain, but a temporary cloud. This tough teacher forced us to look for the eye and showed us it wasn't there. It forced us to see the pain as solid and permanent, only to reveal that it was fluid and fleeting. Most importantly, our loneliness was the very pressure that compelled us to learn the practical skills of the path. It was the howling storm that forced us to seek refuge in the anchor of the breath. It was the cold ache in our heart that made us understand the necessity of cultivating the warmth of metta. It was the direct experience of our own suffering that taught us how to feel true karuna, compassion for the suffering of others. The knowledge of these practices is one thing. The motivation to practice them diligently is another. Loneliness provided that motivation in abundance. There is a beautiful and profound process in nature that perfectly mirrors this spiritual alchemy. When a tiny grain of sand or a parasite works its way inside an oyster's shell, it becomes a constant source of irritation, a persistent wound. The oyster, unable to expel the irritant, does something miraculous. It begins to secrete a special substance, a smooth, luminous, and precious material called nacre. Layer after layer, it lovingly, patiently coats the source of its pain. It surrounds its wound with beauty and strength. Over a great deal of time, this process of healing and transformation creates one of the most beautiful objects in the world, a perfect pearl. Our loneliness has been that grain of sand. It was the sharp, unwelcome irritant lodged deep within our being, causing us constant pain. Our practice, our mindfulness, our self-compassion, our loving kindness has been the nacre. We have been learning, layer by layer, to coat the source of our pain with gentleness, with understanding, with acceptance. We are not destroying the irritant, we are transforming it. And what emerges is the precious pearl of wisdom, of compassion, of a deep and unshakable peace. The pearl, with all its value and beauty, could not have been born without the initial wound. To feel gratitude for our loneliness is to honor this entire process. It is to look at the beautiful pearl in our hand and to understand, with a deep and quiet wisdom, the necessary role the grain of sand played in its creation. This gratitude changes our relationship with the past and our relationship with the present. When old memories of loneliness arise, we no longer see them as evidence of our failure, but as foundational moments in our awakening. And if the feeling of loneliness should arise again now, as it may, for we are still human, our response is utterly different. We do not panic. We do not despair. We can almost greet it with a wry, gentle smile. Ah, my old teacher has come to visit me today. Thank you for the visit. What are you here to remind me of? Are you reminding me to practice metta? Are you reminding me to connect with the natural world? Are you reminding me of the truth of my interbeing with all things? The feeling is no longer a threat. It is a reminder. It is a bell of mindfulness, calling us back to the path. This gratitude is the ultimate act of non-violence towards ourselves. It is the healing of the final wound, the integration of our entire life story into a coherent, meaningful whole. Nothing is wasted. Even our deepest pain becomes a source of our greatest strength. This does not mean we seek out pain or romanticize suffering. It means we have learned the secret of the alchemist, how to turn the lead of our sorrow into the pure gold of our liberation. Having learned this for ourselves, a new and natural impulse arises. We look at the beautiful pearl we have created, and the deepest wish of our heart is to show others how they, too, can find the pearl within their own pain. This is the beginning of the Bodhisattva's journey, the path of turning our wisdom into compassionate action in the world. We have arrived at a place of profound inner alchemy. We have learned to take the irritating grain of sand of our loneliness and coat it, layer by layer, with the precious nacre of our mindful, compassionate attention. The result is a beautiful and luminous pearl of wisdom, a treasure born from our deepest wound. And so, a new question arises, one that marks the transition from a path of personal healing to a path of boundless service. What do you do with this pearl? Do you hide it away, keeping its beauty for yourself in your own quiet, inner sanctuary, or do you hold it out, allowing its gentle light to illuminate the path for others who are still lost in the dark? The Mahayana tradition of Buddhism offers a clear and resounding answer. This is the moment we are introduced to the most noble and inspiring ideal in all of spirituality, the path of the Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is, literally, an awakening being. It is a person who has made the most audacious and beautiful vow imaginable to pursue the path of full enlightenment, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of liberating all sentient beings from suffering, while the Arhat, another noble ideal, seeks to extinguish the fires of their own greed, hatred, and delusion. The Bodhisattva, having seen the interconnected nature of all life, makes a radical turn. They understand that their own liberation is not complete as long as others are still suffering. They choose to remain engaged with the world, to return to the marketplace, the village, the places of pain, again and again, until every last being has found their way home to peace. This may sound like a lofty, mythical ideal, reserved for godlike figures in ancient scriptures, but the true meaning of the Bodhisattva path is that it is an aspiration available to every single one of us. Right now, it is not about being perfect, it is about the orientation of your heart. Every time you pause to truly listen to a friend, every time you choose a kind word over a harsh one, every time your heart moves with a genuine wish to ease the suffering of another, you are walking the Bodhisattva's path. And here is the most profound secret of this path. Your greatest qualification for this noble work is the very pain you have worked so hard to transform. Your loneliness is not your scar, it is your credential. Your past suffering is not your weakness, it is your superpower. Why? Because when you encounter another person who is lost in the desolate landscape of loneliness, you are not a tourist. You are a native guide. You know the terrain. You know where the cliffs are hidden and where the bitter winds blow. You know the false mirages that promise relief and lead only to greater despair. You can look into their eyes and say, "I know," and you can say it with an authenticity that no one who has not made that journey can possibly muster. Your experience creates a bridge of genuine empathy, not just a distant sympathy. And the tools you use to find your way out of the wilderness, the anchor of the breath, the warmth of metta, the tender holding of karuna, the wisdom of interbeing, are now the very tools you can offer to them. You are no longer just a patient who has been healed. You have become a physician of the heart. And your own past illness is your deepest source of diagnostic wisdom. In the Buddhist pantheon, the supreme embodiment of this compassionate action is the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Legend tells us that Avalokiteshvara made a vow to listen to the cries of every suffering being in all the realms of existence, and not to rest until all were free. As he listened, the sheer scale of the world's suffering was so immense, so overwhelming, that his heart broke and his head shattered into 11 pieces. His body exploded into 1,000 fragments. The Buddhas of all directions, seeing his incredible courage and boundless compassion, responded. They gave him 11 heads, so he could hear the cries from all directions at once, and they gave him 1,000 arms, so he could reach out and offer help in 1,000 different ways. In the palm of each of his 1,000 hands is an eye, symbolizing the crucial union of compassion with wisdom. This is not a story about a literal, multi-limbed deity. It is a profound psychological metaphor for the nature of enlightened compassion. The 1,000 arms represent what are known as upaya, or skillful means. It means that compassion is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It is creative, adaptable, and intelligent. For one person, the most compassionate action might be a gentle, listening presence. For another, it might be a sharp, direct word of truth. For another, it might be the gift of food or money. For another, it might be the act of building a community, a sangha, your unique experience of loneliness, and the specific path you took to transform it, has given you your own unique set of skillful means. It has given you your own portion of those 1,000 arms. You know exactly what words would have felt like a balm in your darkest moments, and what words would have felt like a judgment. You know what actions would have made you feel seen, and what actions would have made you feel more isolated. Your past pain becomes your present wisdom, your guide for how to truly be of service to another. This shift in focus from healing me to helping us is the ultimate antidote to the self-preoccupation that lies at the root of so much of our suffering. When your primary motivation becomes alleviating the loneliness you see in the world around you, your own sense of a small, separate, lonely self begins to fade into irrelevance. You become so engaged in the life of the world, so connected through acts of service, that the old, isolating stories lose all of their power. You don't just find an escape from your loneliness, you find a profound and noble purpose in it. Walking the Bodhisattva's path does not mean you must now solve all the world's problems. It starts simply. It starts with the very next person you meet. Can you see the jewel of their true nature behind their fear or their anger? Can you listen to the person checking out your groceries with a moment of genuine presence? Can you hold back a reactive comment online and instead offer a word of understanding? Can you be the person who brings a sense of calm and safety into a room, rather than a sense of anxiety and judgment? This is the path. It is walked one moment, one breath, one kind action at a time. This is the final, beautiful turn of the path, our journey, which began in the dark, cramped, and painful state of personal loneliness, has now opened out into the vast, luminous landscape of universal compassion. We have learned that the only true way to heal our own heart is to learn how to heal the hearts of others. Our deepest wound has become our most sacred gift to the world, and having found this profound purpose, having stabilized our minds and opened our hearts, we are ready to inhabit the final state of being that this path makes possible, a state of quiet, radiant, and purposeful peace. We are ready to experience the silent fullness. We have walked an extraordinary path together, a journey that began in the dark and narrow valley of our own personal loneliness. We started with a feeling of lack, a painful inner void that we desperately tried to fill. We followed this feeling down to its roots, discovering the universal nature of unsatisfactoriness, the dukkha that touches all beings. We identified its cause as tanha, the relentless thirst of the grasping mind. We then performed the ultimate investigation, looking for the I who was lonely, only to find it dissolve into the flowing, selfless processes of anatta and anicca. From that ground of wisdom, we learned to cultivate a new way of being. We learned to anchor ourselves in the breath, to plant the seeds of metta, karuna, and mudita in the garden of the heart, and to stabilize it all with the unshakable peace of upekkha. We found strength in the company of noble friends, joy in the practice of generosity, and a profound connection to the sacred in the mundane moments of our lives and in the natural world. We even learned to turn back and offer gratitude to our own pain, seeing it as the very teacher that set us upon this path. Finally, we turned our gaze outward, aspiring to walk the Bodhisattva's path, using our own transformed suffering as a gift of compassion for the world. And so, we arrive at the destination. What is the result of this journey? What does it feel like to inhabit this state of being? It is a return to emptiness. But it is an emptiness that we no longer fear. It is the final, great reversal, where the painful void of personal lack is transformed into the vast, luminous, and peaceful void of shunyata. It is a state we can only call the silent fullness. The initial emptiness we felt was the emptiness of a vacuum. It was a negative space, defined by what it did not have. It was a hunger that demanded to be fed from the outside. The silent fullness we arrive at is the emptiness of a vast, open sky. It is a positive space, defined by its infinite capacity to hold everything. It is a silence that is not an absence of sound, but an absence of inner conflict. It is a fullness that is not filled with things, but is full of peace, full of potential, full of a quiet, radiant presence. When you abide in this state, your relationship with being alone is utterly transformed. The solitude that was once a source of terror now becomes a cherished sanctuary. You no longer need to fill every moment with noise or distraction, because the silence is no longer threatening. It is your native element. It is a space of deep rest and communion with the truth of your own being. You can be perfectly content in your own company because you know, on the most profound level, that you are not and have never been truly separate from the whole of life. The frantic, needy search for external validation simply falls away, replaced by a quiet, dignified self-sufficiency. There is an effortless quality to your presence in the world. The constant, low-grade striving of the ego has ceased. You are no longer trying to become someone more successful, more loved, more enlightened. You are content to simply be. Life's activities continue. You work, you eat, you talk, you laugh, but you are doing them from a place of deep inner rest. The river of your life continues to flow, but it no longer fights against the rocks in its path. It simply flows around them. There is less resistance, less friction, less inner turmoil. From this silent fullness, a radical sense of connection blossoms, because you have seen through the illusion of your own separate self. You see through it in others as well. You look at another person, and you see not a stranger, but another expression of the same vast consciousness that animates you. You see their joys and sorrows as part of the same human weather pattern that moves through your own heart. This is not just an idea, it is a felt reality. The barriers dissolve. You feel a kinship with the tree outside your window, with the bird in the sky, with the person who serves you coffee. This is the living experience of Indra's net, a quiet, abiding sense of belonging to the family of all things. This state is also one of fearless compassion, because your heart is grounded in the deep peace of equanimity. It is no longer afraid of pain. It can stay open, even in the face of great suffering. You can be with a friend in their darkest hour, without being drowned by their grief. You can look at the news of the world's tragedies with a heart that is both tender and resilient. Your compassion is no longer a fragile, reactive emotion. It is a deep, steady, and wise response to the reality of dukkha, fueled by the boundless energy of a mind at peace. And finally, this silent fullness is a state of spontaneous joy. You no longer have to chase peak experiences or grand achievements to feel happy. Joy arises naturally from the simplest things. It is the joy of a single, conscious breath. It is the joy of seeing the precise geometry of a flower petal. It is the quiet delight of a warm cup in your hands. It is the genuine, unselfish happiness that bubbles up when you see the good fortune of another. It is a gentle, pervasive sense of well-being that is not dependent on conditions, because it arises from the very nature of a mind that is free from craving and aversion. The most enduring metaphor for this state of being is that of the sky. Before we began this journey, we believed we were the weather. When the clouds of loneliness gathered, we thought, I am lonely. When the storms of anger raged, we thought, I am angry. When the brief sunshine of pleasure appeared, we thought, I am happy, and we clung to it desperately. Fearing the inevitable change, we were tossed about, drenched and battered by the constant shifting of our own inner climate. The entire journey of this practice has been about one fundamental shift in identification. It is the realization that you are not the weather. You have never been the weather. You are the sky. You are the vast, open, luminous awareness in which all the weather of life, the storms, the clouds, the sunshine. The rainbow arises and passes away. The sky is not harmed by the storm. It is not stained by the clouds. It does not cling to the sunshine. It allows everything to come and go freely, holding it all in a vast, compassionate, and silent embrace. This is the silent fullness. It is the peace of the sky, not the peace of a day with no clouds. It is the discovery that your true nature is already whole, already free, already boundless. It is not something you have to build, but something you have to uncover. The journey was never about becoming someone new. It was always about returning to the vast, open secret of who you have been all along. We have traveled an immense distance together, a journey that began in the smallest and most painful of places, the cold, cramped room of loneliness. We started with the feeling of a void, an emptiness of lack. With courage, we stepped into that feeling, and in doing so, we embarked on the greatest adventure of all, the exploration of our own inner world. We followed the path laid out by the wise ones, deconstructing the very I that felt so isolated, watching it dissolve into the flowing, selfless river of experience. We learned that our suffering had a cause, and because it had a cause, it could also have an end. We cultivated the boundless qualities of the heart, learning to meet ourselves and the world with a love, compassion, joy, and peace we never thought possible. We found strength in community, purpose in generosity, and a sacred connection in the simplest moments of our lives. We have journeyed from the painful emptiness of lack to the profound and peaceful fullness of being, from the illusion of a separate, lonely self to the radiant reality of our interconnectedness with all things. If there is one single truth to take with you from this entire journey, let it be: this peace is not a destination you must travel to. Happiness is not a treasure you must find outside of yourself. Connection is not something you must earn from others. These are not things to be acquired. They are qualities of mind to be cultivated. They are the natural state of a mind that is free from the veils of confusion. The feeling of loneliness is not, and has never been, a sign that you are broken or unworthy. It is a sacred summons, a compassionate invitation from life itself to stop looking outside for your salvation and to finally turn inward, to discover the unshakable refuge that has been waiting patiently within you all along. And so, you have the map, and you have the tools. You do not need anything more than what you already possess in this very moment. The most profound anchor is your own breath, always with you, a constant invitation to return to the peace of the present moment. The most powerful medicine is your own heart, with its infinite capacity for kindness and compassion. The journey does not end here. It begins again in every moment. It is a path walked, not in great, heroic leaps, but one simple, conscious step at a time. The journey is yours, and it begins now, with this next gentle breath.